Alright, welcome to my stream. Today I'm going to talk about how to make an Imperial Guard regiment. As soon as I get the window up. Okay, there we go. Alright, so making Imperial Guard regiment, first thing you want is the concept. So, in my how to make a character in Dark Heresy 2e, I created a feudal worlder. This actually should be feudal world. Feudal warrior who was trained as a Imperial Guardsman. So I'm going to lift up this idea here and basically move it to the regiment I'm going to make. So Guardsmen, train feudal warders, the Guardsmen. So this is a newly founded regiment, and it's a homebrew one as well. Did I already write down the backstory? Nope. That's all his stats. Okay. Alright, so that's my idea, is veteran guardsmen came to a feudal world to train up some feudal warders into guardsmen. And on that feudal world, they were mostly knights and peasants, but most of them were in a knight faction, so they all knew how to. They all know how to use a sword and fight in armor, and already know how to like skirmish in battles and everything. Okay. Alright, so then let's see. Oops. Let me. What do I have behind this? I don't want that open. That works. I like being able to have these two windows side by side. Alright. There we go. Alright, so then first step is you get 12 points to spend. In the core rulebook of the Only War, there's a how to create your own regiment section. In this section, I can't see chat. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I'll be looking at chat, so if you want to also, if you want to not only ask questions, but also say, hey, it would be cool if you did this, then feel free to also say that too. I don't mind. Normally, when you're making a regiment, it's more fun if you do it with the players there, but from my experience, players will probably mid-max and optimize the fun out of it, so then rather than making your regiment based on concept, they'll probably make the regiment so they get all the powerful stuff. Like, no one would pick a Death Worlder if they're all going to be tech priests, because Death Worlders have a -3 to intelligence, and people would not mention that every single time they made a character. So I recommend you make it with players, but at the same time they might be annoying about it. Alright, so then I need to pick a feudal worlder. That should be in the other rule books. I don't feel like looking that up. I should probably look that up though, which book it is in. But I know feudal world is an option. So I should probably list it here. So Regiment. That might take forever if I do it like that. On world equals boop. It costs points based on which world you pick, and a feudal world is 3 points. And the reason why it costs money to pick a home world is because each home world has special bonuses and negative stuff that comes with it. And the reason why they assign points is so you can't just get everything, but of course a GM can always overrule that. I need to figure out which book the other stuff is in. Should be my folder, Only War, rule books. I see Living already. I think that should be in one of these books. Alright, so the reason why I picked a feudal world is because feudal worlds are worlds where people are mostly knights, or have like sort of like a medieval sort of standard of technology. Sure, the Imperium does drop by and give them like better health care. I know that seems really weird, but when you think about it, the Imperium wants them to do stuff for them, so the best way to make sure people can do stuff is if they're alive. So feudal worlds may not have high technology like tanks or computers or stuff like that, but they do have better healthcare probably, just so that they can make sure that they keep doing their job, which is probably producing some sort of resource for the Imperium. That would be either a valuable mineral for making stuff, food, or maybe just soldiers. Or maybe that's just a planet someone just goes to and hangs out and has fun on there. That's called a pleasure world. So, and then let's see here. Another thing about feudal world is that they're not stupid. They know how to read, because back in medieval society, actually a lot of people needed to learn how to read because that was the best way to learn how to do stuff and transfer information around, because they didn't have supercomputers and you had to send a note to someone, so of course you needed to know how to read it. It's probably primitives and death warders, definitely death warders, are the people who wouldn't know how to read. Primitive societies are people that come before medieval ages, so they are still stuck with like not shields, iron armor, and well-crafted armor. They're more like stuck with wooden tools, maybe stuff they made in a cave. They would be like cavemen basically, or slightly above it. Yeah. Good morning. I am making Imperial Guard Regiment. As soon as I figure out which rulebook has the feudal wars in it, so I can actually give you a stat block of what it does. Here we go. Alright. Woefully primitive by Imperial standard, feudal worlds are home to low technology, largely pre-gun powder societies with a population made up largely of peasants and serfs ruled over by warrior aristocrats. So by that, basically what they're trying to say is that not all feudal wars are exactly the same. You'll probably find some that are medieval ages with knights and swords, and then you'll probably find some that are like slightly above it in like the Renaissance ages, where they're still using knights and swords, but they're transitioning into more guns, and therefore armor is less valuable. But they have like muskets and stuff like that. Thank you for the follow. I'm skim reading this thing to just tell you the important stuff from the book. So feudal wars, war weaponry are typically still the old style weaponry, probably before the gun age or black powder, but it really varies between feudal war to feudal war. Alright, so for the cost of 3 points, the things that you get from a feudal world is do this. There we go. And then I'll just delete that. I like my bullet points, but I also don't want to constantly have to deal with those as I move along. So you get these. Every player who makes a character from this regiment has to use these modifiers here. These are from the planet feudal world. So feudal warriors are people who mostly focused on fighting with swords and shields, and they had to add a really rough life. They probably do a lot of physical activity, such as building stuff, running around, and unless of course there's some rich noble who stays inside all day and lets other people do it. But that's like a slight exception to the rule. So they would get weapon skill, strength, and toughness, the most physical attributes. And then as a feudal warrior, you have common law war, because that's what feudal warriors normally do in a feudal society. Is someone's always picking a fight with someone else over some sort of land dispute, or maybe some person killed someone's parents and now that kid grows up and seeks vengeance upon them. You know, typical feudal warrior stuff. And if you're having trouble picturing what a feudal world is, just picture Dungeons and Dragons or any other generic fantasy setting, and there you go. That is essentially a feudal world. Except for no magic, unless you replace it with psychers. Psychers are basically just magicians, if you want to put it that way. But that's getting off topic, I guess. These are the skills they would get. Characteristic modifiers. And this is fluency. Fluency, I haven't seen this one before. Oh, athletics, because once again, they probably have a lot of physical activity they have to do. Not everyone would have a horse, so they're probably all walking everywhere or running everywhere, depending on how fast they need to get there. Few feudal warriors take the time to learn to read and write, consume as their lives are by toil and warfare, with written language largely the domain of scribes and other specialists. Because of this, feudal world characters do not start with linguistics, low Gothic. Ooh, actually they don't. Skill, but they note up here, scribes and specialists would be the only people who would know how to read and write. In Warhammer 40k as a whole, not most, but there's two people that they would recruit to do their bookkeeping, because a lot of the Imperium still uses paper documents to manage stuff, as well as digital documents. So the two most important groups of people to recruit for that kind of job is a tech priest, but they're annoying, so you would probably recruit a feudal warrior who is a scribe, since scribes spent all their lives probably training to do that. Whereas a common Imperial citizen would also be able to do that too, but that's just like hey, this guy is probably more skilled at it because that's all he knows how to do, versus this other guy probably didn't train as much as this other guy in it. So, and then they also have another sort of fealty. They have fealty as well. There's something else I haven't seen. Okay, so also, because they don't start with Low Gothic, that means you have to purchase Low Gothic. I basically homebrewed that they just have to buy it at 100 EXP, because they can still speak it. So I was like, well, if you can speak it, then it should be easier for you to learn it, of course. So I just counted them as having enough aptitudes to reduce it down to 100 EXP, just so they wouldn't whine and complain about it. But they still kind of wanted to complain about it, and then no one bought it. I think like one person bought Speak Low Gothic. I've totally put them in a room in which they required them to read a bunch of signs in order to know what they were doing. And I'll also highlight this right here. So the reason why low Gothic would be a skill test is if you're trying to read something more complex. So if you're trying to have a complex conversation, that would be a low Gothic check. If you're trying to discern what someone else is saying and they're speaking in some more different dialect of low Gothic, then that would be a low Gothic check. Everyone does not speak like the same low Gothic, so it's not like common in D&D where it's just like you all speak the same language. It's more like low Gothic in this area probably have a different slang to it versus low Gothic in this area. So that's the two ways of using low Gothic as checks, is to decipher languages, either spoken or read. And also, if you don't have it trained, then that's tough luck for you. You can still speak it just fine. Alright, let's see here. Fealty. The majority of feudal warriors troopers are brought up in society with a very clear separation between nobles and commoners. These societies have strict rules of etiquette surrounding how blah blah blah. I'm not sure if this is useful, so I'm skim reading it now. Regiments raised from feudal wars are led by officers drawn from the local nobility. That's important. And the common men and women enlisted ranks tend to revere their officers as not just their leaders, but as their betters. Nobles and their chosen favorites often reinforce this belief with impressive skill in combat. While most enlisted warriors hone their ability to fight in groups spurred on by the prowess of their lords, feudal warriors characters gain the champion. Okay, so here we go. Feudal warriors gain the champion of the double team. So basically that's a really big, long paragraph trying to give you some lore about how feudal warriors would fight, and then just telling you also get these two feats. Feats. So the first one, I don't really remember what that one does, but since it says champion and all that stuff beforehand, I believe this has something to do with leadership and leading other characters into battle. I'll look it up later. Double team is definitely a talent used to help someone else in melee. If there's two people in melee versus one person, they get a special bonus to their attack as they're not flanking them, they're actually double teaming them. I believe flanking is not a thing in here. You have to get the special talent double team to actually know how to properly do it. And that's important because in Warhammer 40k, everything is super deadly, so it's kind of a bad idea to give people stuff for free without proper training in it, because then every person would have double team and then players would die way quicker, or players would be way too powerful. It goes both ways. Oops. The suspicious of machine spirits. Okay. Beliefs and general understanding of the benighted. Oh, and also this nobility leading the common people. I would probably build that into the lore of the regiment that I'm making to have it reflect that. So anyone who decides to be like a sergeant or who's in command would probably be a noble from their home world. Alright, and then let's see here. While most believe in the God Emperor, I think I skipped something. As the church religion, I most believe in God Emperor, Savior of mankind, and his church as one true religion, especially those that have been visited by the ecclesiarchy missionaries. We have other more esoteric beliefs that are tolerated only thanks to their battlefield prowess. So here's something to note right here. So in the Imperium, all faiths have been abolished and replaced by faith in the God Emperor. However, there's still like little things that get past people. Or the Imperium lets slide just because it's more convenient to just ignore it than to kill everyone over it. So one thing to note is, like, the best example of this is Tech Priests. They believe in the Omnisire, which is air quotes the Emperor, but it's something else by a different name, so you could easily argue that's a completely different faith. But they're allowed to continue doing it because they make all the guns for the Imperium. And then basically what this right here is saying is that if you're really good at fighting, then the Imperium will also like let that slide as well. Now don't confuse this with worshipping the Chaos Gods. If you're worshipping the Chaos Gods, they would totally just shoot you. But they're worshipping some other worthless god that has nothing to do with anything else, then they're not going to care. If you worship like the sky, then they're not going to care. If you worship some god of try to think of some old god that makes no, that's not useful or heretical. That would be like, I don't know, like if you worship like the Gaia, the titan of plants and stuff, I guess, then that would be not important enough for the Imperium to care either, to execute you over. But if you worship some sort of weird deity that was telling you to sacrifice stuff and draw weird symbols on everything, and then you start screaming stuff, and you start showing signs of being more delusional and crazy, as well as maybe, I don't know, weird diseases start to pop up on your skin, then that's an issue, because those are the signs of chaos. And not everyone knows the signs of chaos, because one of the best ways to prevent the spread of chaos is to not tell everyone about it. In addition, feudal warlords are by their nature millennial, behind many worlds that provide soldiers to the Imperial Guard. When it comes to technology advancement, their wars are still fought with sword and shield, longbow, and catapult. Feudal war characters suffer an additional -10 to these skills right here. So, another important thing to note, the sword and shield is not a bad option. The longbow is arguably still not a bad option, and the catapult is still not a bad option. You may have, this may be the future, but it is a grimdark future, which is more like a post-apocalyptic future. So sure, some guy with a gun that shoots energy bullets can probably kill you, but if you can block block the shots with your shield, dodge his bullets, and get it close enough to hit him with your sword, his armor is probably not going to withstand that sword swipe. Not to mention, you could probably augment that sword, so it's just not a regular sword. There's a thing called Mono Edge, which makes the sword incredibly sharp, which allows you to cut through armor more easily. Also, you don't have to reload a sword, so that's why that's still useful. Alright, last thing is starting wounds. Oops. Feudal world characters start play with +1 wounds. So the way that wounds are generated in Only War is that you get it from your regiment, and then the archetype that you pick. The archetype says you have a static number of wounds, say 8, and then once you roll 1d5. And you would also add this +1 to it. Alright, now that that's done, I'm going to pull up a calculator so I can keep track of how much points I'm spending quickly. So this would be, I have 12, and I just spent 3. So I have 9 points left to spend. So I have just selected my home world. Now I need a commander. Checking the other books, make sure there's nothing else in there. Pretty sure there isn't. I think there's only like one. No, there's another expansion book. Training Doctrines, okay. Huh, Ogren World. Alright. Let's move those over there. Alright, now let's see here. What's the next thing I need to pick out is the commander, right? Alright, commanding officer. Alright, so commanding officer on a feudal world can literally be anything. There's a bunch of options. Basically, a commanding officer gives the players another starting talent. Feats or talents. I misspoke before. So, really, it depends on anything, really. But I'm going to try to deep this more in the concept up here. So, commander of a feudal war is like a noble. So, is he pragmatic? Does he lead from the front? Is he a cool guy, or does he like sit in the back and order everyone else around? Supin, regiment commander, is a devout man. Pass. Sanguine. The regiment's commander is confident, optimistic, though sometimes too caught up in dreams of glory and triumph, while inspirational to his men with grandiose speeches and heroism. His ambition has often seen them faced with impossible odds, caught up in their commander's quest for glory, and they must battle hard to survive. I think this sounds like a good feudal war aspect. It's like that. It's like that moment in like a movie where some guy gets up and starts making some big speech about how this isn't the last time we're gonna fight these guys, but it's damn well gonna be their last moment of the world, or something like that. Like, I don't know. Commander is ill-tempered. Commander is balanced in his attitudes, careful in decision making. Commander is decisive. I'm not really reading the names because they're weird names. Basically each sort of like an idea for a commander, there's like a little name for it, like melancholy, and then it tells you what makes him melancholy, and it tells you the cost, and then it says they get this special ability. So for melancholy, the regiment commander is careful and introspective, but his will is not what it once was. Having suffered greatly in the crucible of war, while loyal, his leadership is hampered by his hesitation and pessimism. His warriors are often forced to rely on their own initiative in battle, taking charge themselves when their superiors falter. So I guess this would be like a commander who's not really good at his job, and then as a result, all his soldiers have to do all the heavy lifting and commanding for him. So they would gain the air of authority, which allows a character to give orders to a vast array of people with just one action. But I'm going to go with Sanguine. Die Hard. So that's another -2. 7 to go. I'll copy all that over later. Or maybe I should do it now. I'll do it now. Boop. Here we go. Alright. So my commander's picked out. Next step is you may then take any combination of regiment type, training doctrine, and special equipment doctrine. So all these are basically ways of modifying your regiment at this point. So what kind of regiment are these feudal warlords? Are they an armor regiment? An armor regiment is a regiment who knows how to use tanks and stuff. That's obviously a no, as they are not. Well, I mean, it's obviously a no because of the concept I already pre-wrote for them, but arguably it could be your concept. Perhaps they did recruit a bunch of feudal warlords to manage their tanks, but that'd be kind of silly. Should probably lean in on their strengths. So they're not a artillery regiment. Close combat, a assault regiment, possibly. That seems like a good idea. Drop troops, that's also a pretty good idea. As if you drop a bunch of guys who are really good at close combat right on top of the enemy, you got a pretty good bloodbath going on. I don't know. They're like the it's not Good Morning Vietnam. It's I don't know. I can't remember the name of the movie, but basically, Only War is like your perfect opportunity to parody any sort of war movie you've seen, like Good Morning Vietnam, though that's more like a comedy, but that's still a valid option. Or you could parody stuff like The Expendables, any other war movie. You can you can even try parodying RoboCop. Uh, just keep in mind that the Only War system is not just for running wars. It's built to help you run wars faster and more easier. It's not built only for it. So if you want to make Only War characters and then have them go on a investigation mission, then yeah, you can totally do that. You just probably dip into Dark Heresy 2 for advice a little bit here and there if you need it, but since Dark Heresy 2E is what investigations mostly there, although all the resources and tips on how to do that is in there. While Only War is all about running armies against each other and tanks fighting each other and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing it's good for. I'm thinking the drop troops or the close assault regiment is a good idea. The grenadiers probably not. The guerrilla regiment is probably a good idea. Line infantry might work out. So this is the regiment type, and I can take any combination of regiment type, training doctrine, and special thing. So that means I can take multiples if I wanted to, but I don't think it's really worth it. So I'm going to focus on one. The Rough Riders is a pretty good idea. I think that would be cool. Line infantry mixed with Rough Riders, or guerrilla fighters mixed with line infantry. Okay, I'm going to go with Close Assault Regiment because that gives them parry, and that aids in the idea that they fought with the sword a lot. As I want the players to make sure they have the option of actually being good at the thing that I'm saying they should be good at in the lore of the regiment, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and put down. I'll put it over here. Actually, I'll put it over here first to make sure it's formatted right. And then I'll move it over there. Alright, so this will cost me 3 points. Now I'm down to 4. Alright, Close Combat Regiment. While comparatively rare compared to other types of infantry, Imperial Guard does not raise and maintain regiments dedicated to close quarters combat and brutal assaults. Such regiments typically come from technology primitive worlds where melee stuff is obviously, yeah. So the reason why I'm picking this is just because I have the concept of them being close combat. They don't have to have this. It's just something to make sure that they get parry, because I feel like that's dodge and parry are like two important things in the game. And since you're from a feudal world, I think that should be the bare minimum of the thing you should have. But of course you could always just not give them this and give them like artillery regiment or something silly like that. So let's see here, I need to delete that. Alright, here's flavor text justifying the stats below. Costs 3 points. They get weapon skill increase and they get a -3 intelligence to reflect their upbringing. And then they get the option of dodge or parry. If they already have the skill dodge or parry, let's start with assuming they have parry. For example, they get parried at trained, which is the first step. That means they're rolling parry on a 0 modifier, and then if they get parry from here, that means it goes up 1 step to a +10. So it should be an Actually, I think trained is like step 3. Step 0 is known. The next step up is trained, I think. Or intermediate. I have forgotten. Either way, it goes from 0 to plus 10 to plus 20 to plus 30. So they can easily get parry twice here, or dodge twice, or split between the two. Dodge and parry are used as reactions to avoid damage. You dodge bullets, gunshots, explosions, monsters trying to eat you. Parry, you parry weapon strikes from other swords at you. Sometimes I like the rule that you can parry unarmed melee attacks, and the game does allow you to parry things with natural weapons, and if you succeed, I believe you basically cut it off or disable the weapon. I'm a little vague on that part. No one has tried it, and it also makes sense that you would be able to parry an unarmed strike, and the result would be you cut their arm off. So I like this. Close assault regiment is definitely a good thing. However, the book does note that it's uncommon, so maybe I should. Oop, lost my bullet points. Maybe I should give him something that's more common. After all, I can buy more than one. Let's see here. Bullet points. Here we go. Alright, so then. Close combat regiment with artillery regiment, drop troops, guerrilla regiment, or maybe. This is a tougher choice. I mean, it would be obvious choice to give them Rough Riders. Don't worry about my 4 there. Rough Riders cost 5 points, so it would make me a -1, but I can always take a drawback later on to put myself back in the positive. So there's also one called Siege Infantry, which involves them like defending the line or an area for long periods of time. Siege Infantry, yeah. That would be beneficial to their fighting style of having to fight in close quarters anyways. So they'll be up on walls, and since they're from a feudal world combat is usually you're fighting in either an open field, close combat with range support, or you're fighting something from behind a wall or some sort of fortification. There's also the super heavy armored regiment. That basically means the standard regimental kit is a Bane blade, or variant. It's up to the GM discretion. So if I feel like you want to immediately give players access to a Bane blade without, doing some sort of shenanigans, you can just give them the super heavy armored regiment. All of these things come with a special regimental kit. As you see right here, standard regimental kit is a shotgun with 4 reloads or 1 great weapon. So this will get them their sword and a shotgun if they want it. So low-tech weapon is like swords, usually. Melee weapons. Yeah. Actually, can I select more than one of these things? I should be able to, since it just costs points. Regimental type. Let me double check in the core rulebook. I'm doing time for 40 minutes in. Alright. I'm reading how selecting your doctrine and your training and doctrines work. Okay, so one of those doctrines selected, and only one must be selected from regiment type section. Let me just double check this reading. After selecting a homeworld and commander from the previous sections, the players may select a number of doctrines from the following three lists: regiment type, training, and special equipment doctrines. One of those doctrines selected, and only one must be selected from the regiment type section. And the regiment may have no more than 3 doctrines in total. In addition, each of the doctrines listed has a cost in points, which is deducted from the budget set. Okay, so all right, so then I can't select another one of these. This is a training doctrine. Oh, that's a regimental type. So now I'm down to training doctrine. And how does the game introduce you to training doctrines? Every regiment is essentially unique, and while all are carefully measured fighting strength and all are given a degree of uniformity, it's just nothing important. It's not very cool. Alright, so in training doctrines, so training doctrines are essentially like there's a regiment type above, which basically classifies the regiment as either a line infantry or they're drop troops, and then there's training doctrines that allow the soldier to gain specialized training to accomplish a certain task. So there's a training doctrine for close order drill. This translates to the regiment has trained long and hard to operate in close formations, fighting shoulder to shoulder with their comrades. These close formations can respond quickly with overwhelming force, moving as a single entity rather than a group of individuals. It costs 2 points. It gives you and it gives the talents combat formation or double team. Since they already have that, and I don't feel any reason to justify taking it because I already have this right here, close assault regiment, which basically defines what type of regiment they are. And they also pretty much get those things from their home world. It's kind of redundant to purchase that, so I'll probably get something else. Close combat, close quarters battle, unnecessary. Crusaders, I feel like Crusaders might fit them pretty good. It's hard to put this in words. It doesn't really put it in words very well. Let me try reading this again. Every regiment is essentially unique, and while all of the carefully measured fighting strength and all are given a degree of uniformity by the Department Minitorum, there can be no argument against evaluating the strength of each regiment under one's command, identifying their particular proficiencies to better employ them in battle. With diligent training, this strength can be heightened and focused, turning it into a true asset. Okay, so that's like their specialization. Whereas the regiment type reads, it is the diversity of the Imperial Guard Oh, it is the... Actually, yeah, I did read that right. It is the diversity of the Imperial Guard that is perhaps its greatest strength. For with that diversity, there are few threats that cannot be met and overcome. No one element of the Imperial Guard can triumph alone, be it deadly artillery, mighty ranks, or brave infantry. But in proper combination, there is not that cannot be crushed by the hammer of the Emperor. Okay, that didn't really explain what this is for, but this is essentially the regiment type. I feel like I should have just said, hey, this regiment type is for selecting what the core of your regiment has been constructed to do. And then training doctrines is what they're super specialized in doing. But oh well. Alright, let's see here. Crusaders, where did I put the snipers? Well, they're definitely not good with guns, so probably not. Actually, bows would be sniper-like weaponry. But then they would also give them a long las and 4 charges of the sniper rifle as a result of taking snipers. So the way that I see it, field warriors, of course, fight with swords and shields, but then they join the Imperial Guard, so they have to get trained in guns. But they were recruited for their ability to fight with shield and sword. So one of the best things to combine with a very powerful close combat infantry is also long-range support specialists. So snipers would be a pretty good fit, actually, because then you have a good strong front line to protect them, and then they can lay down covering fire or basically eliminate priority targets that are causing problems. So say that they're pinned down by a enemy sniper, then the sniper on the ally side would just snipe the other sniper, and then the troops would charge forward, engaging them in melee. Same thing with them being pinned down by a LMG nest or other hostiles infantry. The sniper would slowly pick them off, giving the infantry squad the opportunity to charge forward with their shields up. And that's just assuming they want to get into the melee. If they wanted to, and they of course have las guns, but I'm just assuming that the whole tactic is there's people in the back line who lay down covering fire or basically give the opportunity for the people in the front line to charge forward and fight them in the melee. Because that's what they're skilled at doing. So I might take snipers. That's my point. There's also sharpshooters as a training doctrine, but the issue with that one is it doesn't give them sniper rifles or any sort of gun. Whereas snipers, wait, what? Oh, okay, no. These two things sound exactly the same, but they're completely different. Snipers and sharpshooters. So for sharpshooters, it costs 4 points. You get the starting aptitude ballistic skill and the starting talent Deadeye Shot, which is a talent that basically boosts damage, I believe, or allow you to shoot without penalties at long range. Snipers costs 2 points, increases your ballistic skill by 2, and gives you the marksman talent, which probably decreases the difficulty of shooting at long range. I think that one actually does that, whereas Deadeye Shot does damage. And then it gives the players the opportunity to take a long las or a sniper rifle as their main weapon. That's a key thing, is that from all this stuff that you're making in the regiment, you don't just get all of it. You have to discern that some stuff is for your main weapon only, and therefore you can't just have like 16 main weapons. You can't just have like a sniper rifle and then a las gun and then a shotgun, because that would be kind of silly for one guardsman to have all that war gear. You're supposed to be somewhat of an expendable soldier, so they wouldn't just give you all that stuff. They would tell you to specialize in one thing, because all these guns are valuable, and there's a lot of people who need guns, so it'd be ridiculous to give everyone every single type of gun. So I'm going to go with snipers, because that seems like a good trade-off. Ballistic skill aptitude. I don't want them to give them the aptitude for ballistic skill. an aptitude is, well, an aptitude is basically the thing that determines how much EXP you will spend on upgrading your character. That's for upgrading your skills, buying new talents, buying new talents, and upgrading your characteristics. It's not an EXP discount, it's more like a detriment to their character creation process. So because my characters were born in a feudal world, they probably don't have the intelligence aptitude, which means it'll be harder for them to learn how to do Medicae, tech use, and stuff like that. I don't want to give them more stuff that pointlessly gives them better stuff in melee combat, because that's kind of redundant. So I want to make sure that they're an actual regiment and fighting force. I could easily just go, I'll just give them close quarters battle drill again, or close order drill, but that's kind of redundant, as they already should be good at that at this point from the previous 2 perks they get, as well as the flavor text. I'm pretty sure I already accomplished that, so I'm going to go with the snipers, so that way they have some range support. And they're not just charging at the enemy, hoping they don't get gunned down, or... And this also like reinforces the idea that they were actually trained how to use guns. They didn't just go, hey, okay, you feudal warders, you don't know how to use guns? Well, tough luck. Why is that? Oh, that's weird. Alright, copy that over there. And then save this, and then re-edit it. So I'm putting it in here and then over there, just so that I can easily just scroll through it here, and then I'll probably end up deleting that later, because it's going to take me a while to get to the top here. Alright, so that's regiment type down. Training doctrine, and now I need a special doctrine, if I want a special doctrine. I don't have to have a special doctrine. So special doctrines are special things, such as augmentics, which is costs 2 points, and essentially the regiment gains an additional +10 on logistics tests made to obtain bionic replacement and implants. Alright, so first thing is, a logistic test is basically a test to acquire goods and services. Logistics is not just money, it's also like your rank and your ability to basically acquire favors, or the favors you have accumulate that you have. So you're not just walking around with a whole bag of gold. You're walking around with something that's worth enough for this thing over here. And then essentially you roll logistics to like haggle with the person to state that, hey, I have this, let's just trade these items, or hey, I'm really important, plus I have this, so you should just give me that item, or something like that. And then you can boost that with a secondary roll beforehand, such as commerce, to reduce the modifier for acquiring that item. A bionic replacement and implants, those are basically like limbs. Let's say you got your Guardsman got his arm cut off. Of course, he's going to need a new arm. So having this will allow them to quickly replace their arms, because they have a +10 to acquire them. There's some interesting stuff in here that throw in some variety. Automated artillery, the squad gets a trench sentry gun, 1 per squad. In the rulebook, it will state if something is 1 per squad. If it says 1 per squad, that means not every player gets it. Only one player gets it in the squad, and they all have to share. If everyone gets the option of taking it, then it will just say this item. If it has to be for your main weapon, it will say state as main weapon only, to prevent players from getting like multiple main weaponry. And main weapons are just basically powerful are not powerful guns, but like standard guns, and they just don't want you to have a whole bunch of war gear for no reason. Excuse me. Alright, so let's see. There is Cavalry Mounts. 1 riding beast per player character. 1 saddle per player character. Ooh, wow, this is cool. I could easily give them mounts with armor. So I don't have to take like the rough riding thing up. I don't have to get the rough rider regiment type. I can just do the specialist. I can just do the specialist thing here. That's pretty cool. I actually haven't looked that much into these things. I made like 1 regiment and I was like already looking for something. So something that I think is kind of important or very useful for a regiment like this that has strong front line and rear support is that probably they want some good medical items. So let's see here, forward opposition. I don't want them to be stealthy. I think I might give them drugs, combat drugs and stims to help them keep fighting. So when constructing a regiment, you're trying to like do a balancing act between trying to fit the concept of the regiment you're trying to make, which is like more of a narrative thing, rather than just giving them the best guns and options possible. Alright, so let's see here. So they're not really much for shooty army. They're not mainly a shooty army. They do have range support. Because their snipers were once like bowmen and they were probably trained how to use sniper rifles, while everyone else was just trained how to use las guns and shotguns. It's really hard to shoot and miss with a shotgun. So I'm going to go with combat drugs, as that's probably the best fit for a regiment, as it's probably a good option for the players in general. Hopefully they don't, so they can let's see here, survive longer. All right, so oops, what did I just do? I am at 0 now. I just cleared my history. Alright, so I have 0. Why is like that? 0. Did I have, do I have 0? I'm pretty sure I have 0. And this is why I wrote them all down. Double checking, and then 3 from here. Yeah, 12. Okay, so I'm at 0 right now. So that means I can still buy stuff, but then I have to make sure that I get back into the positive or 0. So, combat drugs. The Regiment adds an injector or inhaler and 3 doses of Frenzon or 5 doses of stim. Frenzon basically is a berserker drug. It's good for melee fighters. It makes you fight harder, longer. Stim is like, I don't know, steroids or something that helps you stay up and keep fighting, even though you're really wounded. That would be good if there's no healer in the squad. The regiment adds an injector or inhaler and 3 doses. Okay, so the difference between an injector versus an inhaler, injectors are basically just syringes you have to jam in your arm, while inhalers are things you have to breathe in. it may not seem like that big of a deal, but for if you get down into like a narrative thing, then it might be a big difference if your drug is liquid based or air based. Doses of Frenzon, additional doses must be attained through requisition or standard or additional standard kit items. Alright, so I'm happy with that option right there. This is a pretty well-rounded regiment from what I can see. Alright, so now I'm going to take some regimental drawbacks to add some more flavor and get some point refunds so I can purchase other stuff. Cloud of Suspicion. Basically your regiment has an enemy Arbise or enemy Inquisition or enemy other. Basically this is mostly a narrative plot point for the GM. Maybe someone doesn't like your regiment. If we go back up to the top and we read the thing about feudal orders worshipping other things, and that would be a pretty good way of giving them enemy Inquisition. That would be a pretty good tie-in. So I could also give them conscripts, which basically means they were forcibly made into soldiers, which means that's a -10 penalty to the willpower test, command test, and ability to influence other is a -10 as well. Just because they don't want to be there and they are not taking this whole regimental thing seriously, essentially. Cult of Chivalry. The regiment suffered a humiliating defeat, seeking redemption while engaging battle. Member of this regiment was passed a -10 willpower test while ordered when ordered to give ground, withdrawal, or otherwise linguistics of importance to the mission. Doomed. So doomed is like the characters in this regiment cannot burn fate points to survive. Normally in Warhammer 40k systems you have fate points which allow you to reroll rolls. You can spend them to heal yourself before you start getting critical wounds to remove the stun effect and to remove fatigue. Those are very important that people need to not forget. Those are the very important things that fate points do. And then the last most important thing is that you can burn a fate point to survive damage that would actually kill you. However, you're knocked out of the combat situation. Within reason, of course. And then the doomed regimental drawback. I have to be right back. I am back. Alright, so then. I do have some music. I play some ambient. No, I'm not sure if that's copyrighted. Well. Pretty sure it's... Alright, anyways, I'm being distracted by other stuff. Alright, so Doomed. Well, I was saying that you can't burn fate points if you take the Doomed Regimental drawback. Battlefield ambience, that'd be nice. There. I feel like we're in the war zone. In addition, members of the regiment get -10 penalty on logistics tests whenever the squad rolls to get random gear. They apply a -20 to the roll. The game master should also take the regimental drawback into account when designing missions, and he should plan the number of complications that spring up during the execution of the mission accordingly. So, basically what this thing is saying is not only does the Doom drawback do 2 mechanical bad things, such as not allowing you to burn fate points and making it harder to acquire gear and stuff with logistics, but the game master should also make things harder, as you're doomed to die. It's like a suicide mission. Every mission is a suicide mission. I mean, you're already pretty much doomed. The only difference is you can't burn fate points. And I have never seen someone burn a fate point to survive an encounter. I've seen someone die like twice, and he was like, "I'm not going to burn fate points because you're basically just making your character weaker," which is incorrect. Fate points are there for you to burn to survive the encounter. You're making your character weaker by dying and then making a new one. But of course, he just made like a copy of essentially the same character. So, because I let him have the same amount of EXP, he essentially just remade his Tech Priest. So Doomed is like, it doesn't really do anything different except for making it harder to acquire war gear. So, because I did give him a bunch of good war gear options from the start, such as snipers, they get a long las or a sniper rifle. The reason why this right here is a very good option is because these 2 weapons have the accurate quality, plus their range, and their ability to scout out the area if players actually use it correctly. But mostly let's fall back on the accurate quality. The accurate quality means at a certain amount of degrees of successes, you get an additional 1d10 damage. So if they roll really well on their ballistic skill test, they could probably one-shot an enemy. In addition, they can target hostile commanders and in a sea of their own soldiers. So, but yeah, I think it's kind of hard to say. Let's see, what other war gear do I just start them with? It's a balancing act, what I'm doing right now, because Doom makes it hard for you to acquire war gear without actually lowering your logistics as a whole. So they have the option of starting out with sniper rifles, and then they have the ability to start out with their choice of combat stims that keep them fighting. Their commander has Die Hard, which Die Hard is basically a talent that keeps you from dying easily as well. And then of course the Regimental starting kit, they get a las gun in there. I think one of these things gives them a breaching shotgun. Oh, right, here it is. And then this standard Regimental kit, 1 combat shotgun, 4 reloads, or 1 great weapon, or 2 one-handed low-tech weapons per character, main weapon. Oh, here we go. So this right here is these options right here are your main weapon options, and then you get all this stuff. So that means that they have to choose between this right here or snipers down here. They don't get both. As a quick example there. So for doomed, let's see here. How do we justify this? How is a regiment doomed? I feel like honor bound might fit them better, but that just means they can't like refuse a formal challenge, which will probably never really come up. If I picked doom, they would have to go on really bad suicidal missions. Or like not really bad missions, suicide missions, but like more like, I mean, all Imperial Guide missions are basically suicide missions, as everyone likes to say. But it just feels like doomed to just like, you can't use fate points is basically the core thing. I mean, you can't burn fate points to survive encounters. Oh yeah, well let me read Honor Bound. So Honor Bound, members of the regiment must pass a -10 willpower test to refuse any formal challenge or ignore any major slight to their honor. Slight to their honor. If a character from the regiment succeeds on this test, he sees the bigger picture and ignores the challenge or attempts to goad him into action. If he fails, I feel like this one will actually come up a lot more. As let's see here. Let's say the player is fighting an orc, and he's ordered to retreat, and there's like a giant orc force behind this orc, and this orc is just like, "Come at me, bro. Let's fight." And the player is like, "I have to retreat because otherwise I'm just running over there and dying for no reason." And now he has to make a willpower test to decide if he wants to challenge that orc in a one-on-one fight or not. So that might actually happen a lot more. Yeah, it would probably come up a lot more if there's a lot more mixed regiment engagements and stuff like that. And this is most of the drawbacks from what I can see are mostly you have to roleplay with them. You can't just go, this is a mechanical defect to your character. Because the mechanical defects usually fall on you can't retreat from a fight, or you have enemy some other faction, or you can't burn fate points. That's basically what the drawbacks boil down to from the looks of it. There's a bug flying around in here. Poorly provisioned, primitive, nope. Regimental rivalry, scared of loss, tainted, no. The few. Traders, nope. Warp delayed, okay, yep. What is that? This large ass bug. Alright, so then, I'm gonna go with Honor Bound. And I might consider Doomed as well, because most people don't burn fate points anyways. Or, well, at least the one player I killed did not burn fate points. And then the other players I killed, the whole group, couldn't burn fate points because I ended the game. So, burning fate points does not save you from the GM ending the game. So this will give them back 4 points. Oh, shoot. I clicked on the wrong thing. I meant to click this. Alright. Oh, warp delayed? Yeah, the one where you just show up late to all the fights. I believe that's what that one does. Whenever a unit from this regiment rolls doubles on logistics tests, the test counts as failed, even if the score would normally have been successful, as the Department Mentorum denies the request from a non-existent regiment or freezes it in tape. Bureaucracy tape. In addition, the GM should include additional missions complications in most missions to represent the confusion caused by a regiment's unusual status. Arriving at one's destination to learn that all the one's relatives and friends beyond the confines of the troop transports are long dead is a traumatic experience, to say nothing of what horrors might confront the soldiers should their destination war zone have fallen to the enemy. In the intervening time, characters period. Characters from a warp delayed regiment begin play with 1d5 insanity points. Yeah, that actually kind of fits more because this is kind of like a weird regiment, I would say, as they got picked up on a field world by a bunch of Acadians, and then they hopped on a transport to get shipped off to, I don't know, like Acadia to help defend it, and then suddenly Acadia's already blown up to pieces. That's interesting. Well, that's like a lot of narrative flux in there too. I feel like I have to only pick these things if I'm actually going to use them in a narrative sense. Otherwise, that's just free points to add additional stuff to their standard kit. Since this is like the last option to pick is the drawbacks, after that you go into the additional standard kit items, which adds to your character's kit. There you get 30 points to spend on stuff like stuff down there to add to the standard kit, and then any leftover points from your regimental building process, it gives you 2 points added onto the 30 to spend down here. So I might end up with a whole bunch of extra points for no reason if I just grab all these drawbacks. Feel like warp delayed, it's like it might come in handy. As a narrative point, it may come in handy, but that really depends. I feel like it wouldn't. Honor. I'm taking honor though. And then I think I might take doomed. I've never seen someone burn fate points or even get close to dying, because only war characters are actually really powerful. Or maybe I'll just hang out EXP and going easy on them. Handing out too much EXP and then went easy on them, I guess. Alright, let's see here. Tainted. Whatever reason, the soldiers of this regiment carry spiritual and physical corruption which manifests in horrific ways. Characters from this regiment begin play with 1d10 corruption. In addition, characters from this regiment suffer an additional -10 penalty to malignancy test and tested when gaining mutations. Well, that might be interesting. Eventually I'll get mutated. They're not really primitive. They've got training in how to use guns. I feel like that's for a different regiment concept. Destruction, Lost Homeworld. I would say the Homeworld is still pretty good. Let's see if I can find something ambient to listen to. Doomed. Well, it's already pretty hard to acquire stuff from logistic tests. They probably don't need Doom. And I don't really want to buy anything else above, so I think they're pretty well rounded and they're already doomed as it is. Lost Homeworld, choose one. Survival skills, last survivors. Nah, I think I might go with Tainted. So let's go back to the Dark Heresy 2E one right here. So in this thing right here, I made a campaign where the feudal warders were, well, this regiment I'm making right now is based on this campaign right here. On this feudal world, the Imperium was doing experiments on some sort of creature to figure stuff out, and then it escaped, and it probably contaminated the local populace. So I think that might fit in here. Make a connection to this again. So I think I might go with Tainted. I haven't seen people get mutations or stuff like that much, so and it'll be fun to see players freak out about their their different mutations. That's weird. It didn't copy. There we go. Alright, so that gives me back another 3 points. And it's also a worthwhile detriment that it also doesn't just have to be in roleplay. So it's actual mechanical detriment to their character, so I don't have to go, oh no, I forgot about this thing, and now they got 3 points for no reason. So they start play with more corruption points, as well as they have a penalty to their malignancy test. So malignancy is basically their sanity and mental disorders, while corruption leads to mutations, such as physical body modifications, like growing an extra arm or becoming bulky, and getting fish hands. Yes, so I think that works out better than Doomed, because it feels like it'll come up more. Whereas Doom is like solely on the shoulders of the GM and the players if they suck and then they die. Yeah. It's like stacking the deck against people who already have this deck stacked against them, which seems unnecessary. You can always say it's impossible for you to acquire this item. Alright, so let's see, that's 7 points. That one gives me 3. I think, yeah, 7 for Honor Brown and that. Alright, so then. Do I want to go into purchasing additional standard kit items, or do I want to go back up and buy another specialized doctrine? You know what would be crazy if I gave them a super heavy tank? That would be funny. They got sniper rifles, a super heavy tank, and then the frontline infantry. But that would, of course, change up the mission. And, of course, I don't have to give them the tank every single combat encounter. I can just go, all right, guys, you have to clear the path ahead for the Baneblade. A Baneblade is like if you took like 4 tanks and you put them together, that's a Baneblade. Or if like you have seen Metal Gear Solid, then that's basically what a Baneblade is, sort of. Metaphorically wise, that's a Baneblade. That's basically a very, very large tank that can basically shoot mini nukes and has guns for days on it. But I think I can only pick one regimental type, if I remember correctly. Tanks, silly names, they treat like seeds. I don't know if they really qualify for tanks, actually. Regimental drawbacks. Oh, steeds. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there is actually a cavalry one, and you could give them bikes instead. You could easily argue instead of giving them mounts, they get bikes, since it's arguably easier to feed a bike than it is to feed a horse. I don't know. Silly analogy. Alright, let's see here. Somewhere up here, let's see here. The special equipment doctrines. Cavalry Mounts. 5 points. It's a saber battery. I feel like they need more long-range artillery. Yeah, they are fine as it is. I don't want to give them too much good stuff. That is true. But now I have like 7 extra points, which will probably multiply that by 2, and then plus 30. Wait. 14 plus 30. There we go. I was about to say, that didn't map out right. So now I have 44 points to spend on modifying their war gear, which is their standard Imperial kit. So down here it's going to cost points to get each item, and then some items are for your main weapon only, so it replaces the main weapon option, and then some items are just added to your equipment standard kit, which means everyone in the squad gets it, and then some items will only say a squad gets it, so they only have one item per squad. 44 points. Lots of things are kind of expensive in here. This is true, fine as is. So let's see here. Improve a single item of standard kit war gear from common craftsmanship to good craftsmanship. So it's probably really easy to just buy equipment quality upgrades. Let's go up and look at the standard equipment. The standard equipment. Every regiment gets the following items. Weather gear. Never seen anyone use that. Rucksack. Alright, I never seen anyone use any of this stuff. All the way down to 2 weeks of rations is the only thing that's useful in here, pretty much. That's the only thing I see people use. Let me just copy and paste this down here. I'm going to like collect all the regimental goodies they have into one spot, so players can easily just skim through and go, I get this and I don't get this. That's annoying. That should not bother me as much as it did. Yeah, I was thinking about it. However, it reads as it improves a single item of standard kit war gear from craftsmanship to good craftsmanship. So this is any item that the player wants, unless I guess the GM says it's only for swords. So I guess I could do that. Since they're from a feudal world, they're probably their swords are well maintained and crafted, master crafted by their standards, so they're all good quality. Since they are like being recruited from knights or mercenaries, so they probably have really good swords. And that's -5 points. And I don't want to give them too many war gear upgrades, because then that means I'll make less logistic tests or just forget they have it. Because if you spoil players too much with giving them too good items, I'm giving them items that are too good, or giving them items that are too powerful, then they will stop thinking, I guess is the best way I can put it. They'll stop thinking out stuff and just start shooting and charging it and hitting them with the sword. And they won't try to acquire any other war gear, because they already have everything they need. But I'll do that for the sword. Oh, I was gathering up information. I was gathering up starting options for war gear. So let's see here. Nothing in there. Sanguine, that doesn't do that. Okay, here we go. Here's another. Oh. I can actually spin this right here. So something I didn't notice is that this one right here actually has a special thing as well. Because they are a close assault regiment, they have the extra option of getting transports to get them to the close combat, which kind of makes sense. Let's see here. The only pre-written adventure that I have ever run using Only War is the Against the Savages, and on that it basically details using a armor transport versus not using an armor transport. Basically, the benefit to using an armor transport is obviously its defensible attributes. It's hard to take down, and they have a mobile turret on it. A large weapon that could probably easily kill anything. However, it makes tons of noise. So you have to balance the act of, hey, do we bring the tank or not bring the tank? And this costs an additional 2 regimental creation points. So I'm going to subtract 4 points from here, as this is regimental creation points, and I'm using the standard kit points right now. So I converted them. I'm going to convert them back. So that's 35. So I'll give them this an option at the start of every mission, is they can bring a Chimera transport or they cannot bring the Chimera transport. Damn bug. Cannot hear it. Oh, okay. It's ambient. That's right. I prefer the shipborne ambience. It's nicer. Oh, my volume is down. That's why I can't hear it. Alright. So that'll give them a more of a tactical option. Bring the tank, you'll probably be safer, but then more enemies can hear you, which means they'll draw more enemies to you. Don't go on the tank, you'll be more dangerous because you'll be a softer target. However, you'll be better at stealth. Giving the players that option is probably a good idea. I mean, this whole regimental creation process is essentially giving the players options of what war gear to immediately start with. So that's something I'm going to kind of double down on. And then let's see here, snipers. This is also what they get, and then they get combat drugs. This doesn't add any war gear. And Tainted doesn't add war gear. So I collected all the war gear items down here. This is essentially the starting kit modified by previous choices and options. And now I'm going to purchase stuff. Let's see here. I'm going to move this down below. Actually, I should probably move it up here to top. Kind of like move that down one. Try to separate the two choices. Bullet points are really hard to use to get it exactly how I want it. Alright, so players can improve a sword or melee weapon of their choice to good common. I mean good craftsmanship quality, and a craftsmanship quality to good. For melee weapons, I believe it just increases their chances to hit, which is pretty good. It's good, but it's good because it'll encourage them to head into the melee combat without feeling like they got the short straw on weapon skill, so they shouldn't do that. It kind of encourages it. as that's their specialty too, is melee combat. So it encourages it slightly, or lightly encourages that. Let's see here. Additional knife, last pistol, step automatic. Do they get a knife? I don't think they get a knife. Why did it say add an additional knife? There we go. Oh right, their favorite weapon. I'll figure that out later. I'm going to add a frag grenade. That's 5 points. And then I'm going to add a smoke grenade. That's another 5 points. So that'll give them some tactical options. Generally, if you're on a battlefield and you're getting shot at, the best way to deal with that situation other than shooting back is to throw a grenade. So you want to pop smoke so you can give cover, or throw a grenade and blow the thing up. So those two options help you clear a room. It'll also complement their melee focus, so that way they can lay siege to a building. You chuck the frag grenade in there first, and then you rush in with your sword drawn, while someone covers you with the las gun or shotgun. I'm thinking about giving them crack grenades, but on second thought, those are probably expensive because they cost like 15. I mean, not expensive in this chart of costing it 15 points. I mean, they're expensive like they don't expect you to go up against armored targets, and that's what crack grenades do, is they're good against armored targets. I could add a chrono to their kit, which is basically a clock, to help them tell time. I'm going to do that because, tactically speaking, if you need to coordinate some sort of tactical thing, I'm going to go, hey, you guys can use your clocks, your chrono thing, which is a watch, fancy word for a watch. I have never seen anyone use it, but I would like people to try. A clip drop harness is something that helps them scale down and up terrain. Essentially, if you attach a clip drop harness, it's a clip drop harness is basically climbing gear. Essentially, what that is. So it's good for rappelling and climbing up stuff, as long as you have a rope to secure. Which one player used it. One player used it in my other campaign. There was a wall. He ran up to it and he threw his grappling hook up on the wall, and then he secured it to his drop harness, and then he climbed the wall. So one player used it. That was like the only Regimental Kit item some player actually pointed out and used, I would say. Everyone else forgot they had it. Hence why you don't give them so much good stuff, because they won't value it and they'll be spoiled. So I might give them this though. I'm giving them like all the easy options that they're probably not going to pick out, just because why would you want to watch? When you're a guardsman, you should just be shooting stuff. It's probably the thought that goes through their head. Add an additional uniform for dress or parade use. I'm going to do this right here. Since they're like from a feudal world, and most of them might be from a knight family or something like that, so they probably want to look nice in more formal settings. So having a dress uniform would be important. I've never seen someone go through their standard uniform. Oh, that's just me. I don't know what the Minotaur manual does. Well, that's good to hear. From my experiences of running Only War, everyone forgot what was in the standard gear kit. Then one person said that they misunderstood that they all get those items. So I can't tell if the other people had that same issue, but it should be noted, if you're starting a game of Only War, make sure players know that that stuff in the starting kit, you get those things. And I'm pretty sure I wrote it down too, which was the weird part, is I'm pretty sure I wrote it down. Alright, I don't want to give them the photo visors because if you have played like horror games or not so horror games like Half-Life, having a flashlight versus night vision goggles, there's a lot more stuff you can do with that. If you give them night vision goggles, then they'll probably not take night combat seriously, and they'll just be walking around, oh, well, I can see just fine because I have photo visors, which are basically night vision goggles. So I would avoid giving them stuff like that. I would rather just give them a flashlight. Purity seals through a standard kit. No. Respirator, no, I'll make them get that. Survival suit. A survival suit is essentially, well, it's in the name. It helps you survive harsh conditions. I would say that these guys probably aren't, their lives are valued, but not valued that much that it would be well kitted out for all situations. So I'm going to try to make sure not to give them everything useful. I'm going to focus on getting them some things that are useful, which is just a quality equipment upgrade and then grenades. Just because I want to have make sure they have the tactical option there. They already have drugs for free. I don't see any point of giving them slot or friends on. 2 weeks of additional ration packs. No. Add a single advanced medkit to the squad standard kit. I might do that. Grapnel to standard kit. Magnopulars. I'm going to add micro beads to the standard kit. This will cost them 8 points. And I write down the cost so I can quickly check my math. Or alter something if I want. Pick recorder. A microbead, for those of you who don't know, it's basically like the thing that goes in your ear that allows you to talk to someone else who's within 30 meters from you without having to yell. It's like a Voxcaster but smaller and portable and has a smaller range as well. A pick recorder is basically a camera or a video recording device. It's really up to the GM or the player which one it does. Probably both. Even though this is a grimdark setting, technology, it's really hard to explain the technology level in a grimdark setting such as 40k. It's like they have super advanced stuff, they just don't know how to make it, or they need a blueprint to make it. Which is why crafting is so hard to rule in this game, because they don't really have a proper crafting mechanic in the game. Add a single stummer to standard kit. I don't know what a stummer does. I have to look stuff up now. I'm looking at what a stummer does. Yeah, see, that's the thing about Warhammer 40k. It's like, it's heresy to craft stuff, but at the same time you have a crafting system that doesn't go into details as to what would be considered heretical crafting and just crafting stuff. It's really weird in this system. Like, you can easily make a spear and a bow, but is that heresy? The system doesn't say it is, but from the lore you would think that doing more advanced stuff would be heresy. So it gets really weird like that. Having to rule on that situation gets really annoying. Alright, a stummer. The reverse of a screamer. Stummers generate sound waves to cancel out ambient sounds and noises made moving personnel in a small area. Okay, so it basically helps in stealth. Targeter. What does the targeter do? It's almost 2 hours in, and I'm almost done with regimental creation. Yeah. Mostly tech priests are the ones who be mostly up in arms about committing tech heresy. Everyone else probably wouldn't care. Because Imperial Guard, Regiment, would you shoot a Guardsman for maintaining his own weapon and fixing the tank when there's no tech priest anywhere around to do it for you? No, you'd be like, oh, look, the tank's fixed. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Good job over there, guys, for, you know, I don't know why I'm congratulating you on that, and then you would just walk away. The tank's fixed, they can go back to fighting. No one would care. The only people who would care are tech priests, and that's why they're not invited to all the parties. However, some tech priests would probably be lenient on there as well. The Imperial war machine may have their logistical problems and issues, but they also realize at a certain level it's just faster to ignore certain rules and regulations. And that's why I also have inquisitorial agents who are either like the Puritans and the Radicals, and then somewhere in between. Radicals are people who will do anything to get the job done. Puritans are people who will follow the rule book only to get the job done. And Imperial Guardsmen, they probably don't care. It really depends on the character. I am looking for... What am I looking for again? No. Targeter. What is a targeter? This book needs to cite the page. Sharpshooter Doctrine. Yeah, corruption is everywhere, just in minor doses. I don't know what targeter does. I think that just helps them shoot better, probably, and that's not really something they need. So at the very bottom of the list there is basically you get to select any item you want, gear choices. So I can get a add an item of abundant availability to standard kit. This will cost me 2 points. So this is a really cool option to buy. That way you don't have to go out of your way selecting, fine-tuning a kit, when you can just go, here's a bunch of options with just items that you can just select as a result. So I have 10 points left. I could just buy I could just buy a bunch of these options right here. I would recommend not allowing them anything above scarce. Scarce is usually where cybernetics come into. However, it's still up to GM's discretion, but it's really, really annoying to sit there going, not that, not that, not that. So I'm just going to go nothing above average. So everything at common quality is probably more mundane stuff. You don't have to worry about being overpowered. So I'm going to go with that. Because I want the idea is to let players go, oh, I'm from a feudal world, I'm already good with melee combat. I have the option to get a improved craftsmanship sword. However, it replaces my main weapon down here. So how do I get around that? Oh, the GM said you can select an item of average availability or below. That means that I can get my sword at this craftsmanship quality while still getting a las gun. Essentially, that's the idea. I think I have the correct options for the regimental starting kit. I could have sworn you started out with a gun in the regimental starting kit. I think that just might be the classes I'm getting that from. Either way, though, they're fine with war gear wise. I'm just going to give them these options to make sure that they can go, I have a shield, a sword, and a main hand weapon. And so the sniper rifle, and they also get a sword, because I believe the sword conflicts with main hand weaponry. I guess I'm redundantly speaking that. Yeah, right here. This is it right here. Oh, they already get 3 frag grenades and crack grenades, so they just have a bunch of grenades now. I will actually refund the crack grenade thing then. 1 suit Imperial Guard flak armor per character, 3 frag grenades, and 2 crack grenades per player. So I'm going to remove that one right there. Get back to 5 points. add an additional crack grenade, because too many crack grenades might make things too easy. That might just sit there and just keep throwing frag grenades. I can take the smoke grenade twice, so that way they have 2 smoke grenades. But 1 smoke grenade per person might be pretty good as is, because they might not even use it. Or maybe they are saving it because they don't have another option, so giving them another grenade might encourage them to use the first one more. It's a little back and forth I like to do with myself about what players think. Some players aren't very tactical, and I'll go into encouraging tactics later on if I have time. I have 8 minutes left to round out character creation for the regiment, and I should be done by 8 minutes, surely. So let's see here. I said comment below, but before I select that, I'm going to double check and make sure they can actually buy a sword. Because I want to make sure that they can easily get any sort of primitive weaponry with this option right here, is my idea. So let's see here. Ammunition is usually there's no special ammunition type to be. Oh yeah, that is an option. You know what? As their favorite weapon, I could give them grenade launchers as their favorite weapon, just to encourage that kind of fight style. Because essentially, once again, going back to their common upbringing in siege warfare and feudal world combat is that they would have a front line and then a rear line support that would do stuff like that. Throw grenades, bombard the enemy, snipe down their more powerful units, while the front line infantry would either hold the line or push forward. So, here's the thing on targeters. So let's see, expensive, heavy, and rarely used except by elite forces. A targeter uses a variety of guidance, cogitators, blah blah blah. Okay, so a targeter just reduces the penalty to shoot, which I probably don't want, because if I'm giving them a sniper rifle and they all have the option of taking a targeter, then that's a lot of damage coming out, because sniper rifles have the accurate quality, and as soon as they get 2 or more degrees of success, that's a lot of damage that's going in. So let's see here. Oh, here we go, weaponry. So for most melee weapons, it's very rare. Average. Since they are a melee focused unit, I would allow them to get shock mauls, power axes, power fists. They already have the option of picking up a great weapon, which is scarce. Hunting lance, plentiful, is a knife. Knives are plentiful, shields are common, spears are common. I want them to be able to go, I would like a spear to really make my character. So I'm going to give them the option of a common weapon, which could be used on a spear. So common it is. I mean, sorry, shield. Why did I say spear? I meant shield. Cost 5. And I'm going to write in recommended for shield. I'm going to write in recommended for shield, not required to be used on the shield. That way they see the idea that, hey, I have this in there to give you the option of picking up a shield with your build. Because you're a feudal warrior, you would have a shield going into combat. I mean, growing up on your homeworld, maybe you picked up a shield on the way out. And then you can also pick up a sword as well. Let's see here. Shields basically add defense, which provides 2 AP to armor and body, which is good for your soak if you're trying to hold a line or fight something one-on-one, such as an orc. Let's see here. But it has the primitive 6 quality, which means it's not meant to be used as a melee weapon, but you can melee attack with it still. It has a 1d5. So you could fight with a sword and shield. You hit him with your sword. I mean shield. That's funny. Alright, let's see. A grenade launcher. I need to type in favorite weapon real fast. Favorite weapon. Go back up here. I must have skipped a step somewhere. Choose a favorite basic weapon and heavy weapon. Just put that in. Oops. That's not gonna work. There we go. So, basic weapon. Oh wait, I can make their basic weapon the sword. I'm gonna do that. A sword is a basic weapon. And then heavy weapon. So now someone down here can use this on a shield. Or gain a additional sword. And then their favorite basic weapon is favored by the regiment is swords, which means it's easier for them to acquire swords. Yeah, grenade launchers are pretty useful. Let's see here. How much? What is the weapon classification for grenade launcher? I'm thinking grenade launcher or rocket launcher for their anti-tank weaponry, because I've tried heavy bolters and things with multiple degrees of heavy weapons like the stubber, heavy bolter, and multi-las guns that give you additional damage rolls based on degrees of success. Those can be overpowered really quickly, to the point where it's like that one person becomes the whole center focus of the combat. They just sit there and gun everything down. Yeah, I'm gonna go with rocket launchers, because rocket launcher, they got one shot and they have to make it count, versus grenade launchers, which is more like they have a whole barrel full of grenades and they're just like spamming it sort of to clear out an area. Which is nothing wrong with that. It's just that the idea is that they want to be more cautious with the ammo while still giving them the option of something more valuable. Grenade launcher is an average weapon. Huh. I can always give them the option of that. Then, actually no. Probably should. Oh well. Let's see here. Hunter killer. Well, I mean it's up to degree GM discretion still. So, missile launcher is rare. So missile launcher is their favored heavy weapon. So the reason why this selection is important is because later on in the classes, archetypes, or whatever you want to call them, when a player selects one of those, I believe the heavy weapons trooper guy, heavy weapons specialist has the choice of just getting the favorite heavy weapon of the regiment. So instead of getting his usual kit item, he could just go, I would like that missile launcher. So that's why you have to be careful which weapons you put down here, because if you give him something really powerful right from the start, then it kind of might skewer the combat a little bit too much. Bolas. Yeah, that's true. But from my Only War experience, my previous campaign, no one really used their grenades. They were all just using the multi-las. Because I didn't see it, because I didn't originally see it as much of an issue to give them a multi-las, but then the tech priest also got a MIU weapon interface, and I didn't really look at that thing. So once he attached that to his back and then attached the multi-las on top of that, he basically was able to fire the multi-las as a free action. And then he was able to circumvent all the penalties from firing a heavy weapon because of the MIU interface. That's like a little thing that could have fixed, but at that point it was just like, they're not really doing anything but relying on the heavy las. Like, heavy weapons on their own aren't a problem, but if you let a tech priest become a walking turret, that is an issue. I would because the MIU weapon interface profile in all the rulebooks that I have looked, and I even googled on the internet, because the GM actually does research when they're trying to rule stuff. It might come as a shock to people, but GM does research, and yeah. As a result, for those of you who don't know, the MIU implant for a normal person is probably fine, but for a tech priest, because a tech priest is so heavily geared in tech use and intelligence stuff, the MIU implant basically piggybacks off of that and uses those bonuses, if I remember correctly. And then from there, the MIU implant, if you insert any weapon into that, regardless of weapon training, it will basically ignore it because you have intelligence or high tech use. So to balance out an MIU implant, you would think that you can't put a heavy weapon in there because obviously it will slow down the character. But once again, he's a tech priest, so he was easily able to circumvent that by getting implants that basically boosted his strength. So he could walk around with the thing just fine, and it wouldn't slow him down. And they didn't care about stealth, so I could just throw enemies at them, but they didn't care because they have a multi-las. And the multi-las can, based on degrees of success, they can shoot one target, then move to the next 5 meters to shoot another target, and then another target. So, mobile turret. And there's no penalties to him moving and shooting. So, it was like so many things that I had to rule against when I gave him that MIU interface. That's just one of those situations where one thing is an issue, but then there's a whole bunch of other issues stacked on top of it that made it a one giant issue that's impossible to fix without just going, you can't play that character anymore because I don't feel like fixing it. So I guess the whole point of that story is, first thing is MIU interfaces don't state what weapon you can put into them. Second thing is, even if the weapon weight is heavy and the character can carry it, I would recommend not allowing a heavy weapon to be placed in the MIU weapon interface. Third thing is, if they don't have weapon training in it, then the MIU interface shouldn't work, in my opinion. That might balance it out as well. They have to have heavy weapon training las in order to use a heavy weapon las in the MIU interface, regardless of having the stupid computer thing do it for you. And then final thing is, I would probably force it to still work off a ballistic skill, regardless of that extra bonus that the MIU gives you. I would just ignore that bonus and say, nope, you have to use your standard ballistic skill ability. Keep it from being overpowered, because you fired the thing at a free action. That's what really makes it overpowered, is that you fired at a free action. So all the extra stuff you get on top of that is just ridiculous. You don't need weapon training. If you're strong enough to walk around with it, and then since it was a multi-las, you barely had to reload the thing. Lots of the guns in 40k, you never really had to reload in a combat situation, and if you did, you would probably just holster it and then draw your other weapon. I have 10 points left to spend. I'm thinking about what I was going to spend it on. I'll just put it 10 points. I'll give them another smoke grenade, like I said before. That'll encourage them to use the first one to help reduce the danger of a situation. I can take it twice, I think. Let me double check. Smoke grenade. Yeah, I can take it twice. Cool. And then for the last final points is that I'm going to basically just shell out the rest points, and you can select any item you want of 5-2, so plentiful and abundant quality. You can select any item you want, and GM discretion. So that rounds out the Regimental Standard Kit, and I am over 6 minutes because I went on a little bit of a rant. Well, the issue with the MIU implant is that it negates the penalties for having to brace. And if you're worried about the penalties for bracing, you just get bulging biceps. And the issue there with bulging biceps with heavy weapons, bulging biceps is supposed to negate the penalty for having to brace. But because the MIU implant is placed on the shoulder, your shoulder, it doesn't specifically say you have to that applies to it. So there was a lot of little things I had to rule against. So many little things I had to check because the rules didn't state it properly. It's a lot of stuff to go through. It's like one large balancing issue. But yeah, that is a good idea. It's just that there's always a workaround, because that's kind of the point of the system. Is it's really hard at first, but then you start to get talents that help you work around the things that you're having trouble with. If you're having trouble with fighting multiple dudes in a melee combat situation, then you get Combat Master, allowing you to take on multiple targets at the same time. If you're having trouble dodging attacks or too many people are shooting at you, then you take Step Aside, which allows you to get a secondary reaction to only dodge. Which is fine on its own, or with other stuff. It's just that this one issue is like 17 other issues stacked together that created some really wacky, unbalanced thing. Alright, so then, moving on to character creation. Now we're done with our regiment. Let's copy and paste this document, this information into the doc and the Foundry. Now we need a name for this regiment. Since this is probably the first founding, we're going to call it First. They're feudal warriors who do knight stuff, so let's see here. What's something knighty? Knight-like we could do. Let's dive more into the backstory. What kind of missions would they be going on? And what is their commander like? Normally you would name something based on what their commander is like. So, homeworld, commander. I'm always bad with naming stuff, so let's go with the Silverhawks. I'm gonna call them the First Silverhawk. Yeah, I used the name from something else. Oops, I don't know why I keep putting an E in there. So, taking into account all the little stuff I added in here, I feel like Band of the Silverhawk, it might be a pretty good, what's the word for it? It's not a parody. It's a, not an Easter egg. Reference, yes, reference. It's a good reference to some anime. Band of the Silverhawks. Let me put in there. First Band of the Silverhawks. So the reason why I picked that one is because, let's see, they're from a feudal world, the way their commander acts, and then this thing right here, they have honor bound, that just, compounds the thing. Sanguine as their commander, they die hard, so it's a perfect little regiment for that reference, I would say. Okay, I have covered all the steps in how to make a regiment. For the mixed regiment rules, I have to look that up. Basically, when you have a mixed regiment, essentially you're basically having two regiments that have to work together. This is a common thing in Warhammer 40k. If one regiment takes heavy losses, they are then fused with another regiment, or they are just retired on the planet and forgotten about, because it's cheaper to just forget about them at that point if they have taken that many losses. Basically, the penalties to a mixed regiment, it's essentially like a culture clash. Basically, one side might be like, hey, we think tanks are really awesome. And the other side is like, well, we think swords and shooting things from long range is more cool. And then they fight about that. That's essentially what mixed regiments are. Also, logistical penalties as well. Stuff like that. I don't know where that rule is, but I don't feel like looking it up. Moving on to making a character. We're going to open this up. And we're going to go with Guts as our character. So I'm using the Foundry system for Dark Heresy 2E. So some things will look differently, such as influence. This should actually be logistics for this system, but it functionally rolls the same, as far as I can tell. And of course, back around homeworld up here is stuff you're just going to have to ignore, because those are all wrong as well. So we're going to move on to creating a Guardsman. So creating a Guardsman is actually more complicated than creating a regiment, because there's so much more branching paths. Creating a Guardsman is not setting your role in stone. Keep that in mind. And Warhammer 40k systems, your role is not set in stone. You don't pick one thing and then you're just locked into that until your character dies. You don't have to pick a medic and then only buy medical stuff. You don't have to pick a melee focus character like the weapon specialist and only buy heavy weapon stuff. You can make a heavy weapon specialist and then dip into Medicae only. It'll just cost you slightly more EXP based on the aptitudes that you have. So, generating a character. Roles. Right here is the summary of the stuff that the regiment will affect your character. So if you have a redundant aptitude, skill, or something like that, they actually give you a refund or just allow you to select a different aptitude. Alright, so my concept for this character is Guts. His name is Guts. He is a heavy weapon specialist and prefers a great weapon. Starting EXP for a character. So there's two different types of characters. There's the specialist. Heavy weapon specialist doesn't count as that. And then there is just a normal Guardsman. Normal Guardsman gets 600 EXP to spend. Specialists have that and go with 300 EXP. The reason for that is the specialists get a lot better starting gear, and the EXP cost for that is essentially to balance things out. But you get a lot of powerful options right from the start. We'll also go into generating a comrade later on. So stat generation for Warhammer 40k characters in the Only War system is 2d10 plus 20. And that is done for every single stat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Rolling my stats. So I'm just going to slot them where they are. 28, 30, 35, 33, 36, 39, 34, 30, 36. Alright. So there's multiple ways of rolling stats and slotting them You can either do where you roll them is where they go, or you can roll them and then put them where you want. You also in the rule system, you get 1 stat to re-roll. I'm gonna pick my weapon skill because it's pretty low for someone for my character concept idea, and I got 20, so I'm just gonna ignore it. And I'm going to ignore and move on. Yes. All right. Now we're gonna go into selecting the Guardsman. So my options are heavy gunner. Oh, not weapon specialist. Oh, weapon specialist is different from between heavy gunner and weapon specialist. Weapon specialist is someone who specializes in using a certain weapon. It can be any weapon. And then a heavy gunner is someone who uses all the heavy guns. So you have heavy gunner, self-explanatory, medic, operator. Operator focuses on operating vehicles such as ground or flying. Sergeant is focuses on leading his squad. Normally, he should probably only select 1 sergeant, but depending on your campaign, you could have multiple sergeants in the squad. It's really up to you how you figure that out, how that's going to work. The options are you just have another sergeant. Option 2 is only 1 player can be a sergeant. Option 3, only the NPC can be a sergeant, and that's controlled by the player, the game master. Option 4 would be for every additional sergeant, you just give them an extra infantry squad of cannon fodder. But try not to do that last one too much. If you give them too much NPCs, it not only slows down combat, but it makes them rely on the NPCs to solve the problem. Which isn't really a problem, but if you want to do like large scale combat engagements, then that's a good idea. But if you want to do smaller scale things, such as a crack team of these select 10 dudes going behind enemy lines and blowing something up, that's kind of undermined by having 2 or more squads with the players. However, seeing a squad with the players would help fix the casualty problem. If players die, they can just take over a NPC in the previous squad and keep moving onwards. Alright, weapon specialist is the average, air quotes, average guardsman. These men these men and women are women perfect for, God, jeez, words. These, the average, air quotes, guardsmen, these men and women perfect the use of lasgun or other weapons, bringing death to enemies of the Imperium. Alright, and then the specialists, these are the things you actually have to be worried about, in my opinion. Commissar is great leaders raised in the legendary scholar Pegnium. It's some sort of fancy school. These men and women enforce morale over rank and file troops with an iron fist. Something to be worried about with commissars is some people think commissars just shoot people all willy-nilly. They solve all their problems by summarily executing people. That's like a really cop-out way of and stereotype way of running them. If you want a player to be a commissar, you should probably encourage them to encourage their squad mates through words and actions, not just shooting someone in the face. That's like really that seems like a last ditch effort for a commissar, is to gun someone down when other solutions don't work out, because you're essentially undermining your very effort to fight the enemy by shooting someone in the face that's on your side. Sure, you would shoot someone who's sitting there praising chaos, but there's a big difference between that and raising morale through a harrowing speech. I think I read a story or listened to a story somewhere where it was like, instead of like shooting the conscripts to encourage them to fight the enemy that they knew that they were all probably going to die fighting, the commissar sat there. I'm going to take a drink real fast. Alright, so where was it?
So instead of the commissar shooting the guardsman to encourage him to fight, or saying fear me and follow, instilling fear in the guardsman, he goes with this speech. I'm probably gonna like paraphrase it because I don't remember exactly. Basically, he said, "So look at yourselves and look at the enemy. Yeah, they look really scary, the giant monsters, but then they should be afraid of you. And the reason why they should be afraid of you guys, it's not because you're gonna win. It's because the very idea that a common person who's busy plowing his fields, sowing seeds to grow his crops, or some guy just, living his life on a high world, probably reading books, dropped what he was doing, put on Imperial Guard flak armor, grabbed a lasgun, and came out here to kick their ass. That should fear them. That they should fear. The idea that the Imperium, no matter who they are or where they are, they will all come here to fight this war, even if it looks like they're going to lose. That should instill fear into the enemy. That's something a commissar would say and do. Not the, I'm just going to shoot you, because that's what commissars do in the lore. Commissars would instill fear by instilling morale in their troops and instilling fear in the enemy, not the other way around. Because one part is just like you're just causing more problems, while the other one you're actually encouraging your troops to actually fight harder. Sure, they're going to die. You told them you're going to die, but it's going to matter. The death is going to matter, because you're basically showing the enemy that you will not be pushed around, and there's more of you. More of you will come, so that's more of, hey, you guys over there, fear these guys, and then that's going to probably hit the enemy morale more, because they're like, hey, yeah, we can keep killing these guys, but they're just going to keep coming. There's more of them. And they're just like, I'm bigger than them, but they're still fighting me. It's like, I don't understand this. So that's the whole mentality of the Imperial Guard right there, is that, sure, they may seem like cannon fodder, but there are actually a lot of good Imperial Guard regiments that do win wars. Let's see here. Of course, you could note the Kriegsmen, who people seem to think are fearless, but they're not. They're just very well-trained guardsmen who are resistant to fear effects, essentially. And then their whole cultural thing as to that. And then you get the Katachan jungle fighters who since birth trained to fight in hostile situations. And then you get the Chem Dogs who the Chem Dogs, who are basically like penal legient. They're all criminals and people who all were encouraged to fight for the Imperium, not because it's the right thing to do, because the Commissar was like, hey, if you guys want some shit, I'm going to look the other way, but in return you have to kill all these people I don't like. That was his speech to them, and they were like, oh yeah, sure. So we get to keep what we kill, and it reduces our sentence. Sounds good. Also, they get a bunch of drugs, too. The drugs help. So there's multiple ways of encouraging an Imperial Guard regiment to fight for the Imperium, and all of it does not go, you should fight for the Imperium because that's the right thing to do. That's like the last thing they use to encourage people. And then the last thing before that, in my opinion, would be shooting someone. So, moving on to Minister and Priest. I have never seen someone play a priest, except for one time. Mostly, I think the priest encourages the troops through words and morale boosting effects like that. An Ogryn is essentially a tank for the group. They are akin to a Space Marine in combat strength. It has been noted in the lore that Guardsmen look up to Ogryns because they're so powerful and tough. They can fight one-on-one with a Space Marine or a Orc Knob, and that encourages the Guardsmen with them to keep fighting because they're like, hey, we can win this fight thanks to this guy, so let's keep it up. And then there's Sachin Psychers who use magical bullshit to help their allies and hopefully not cause problems. Then there's the Stormtrooper, who is like the elite special forces of your regiment. they essentially have better armor and weaponry from the start. So they get hotshot las guns and armor with an AP value that's higher than the standard flak armor. Hotshot las guns are just really good at getting through armor. However, they have limited range. A las gun has a 100-meter range, whereas a hotshot las gun has somewhere around 30, I believe, or 60. So the range does help, but yeah. Most engagements are around less than the 100-meter range. Warhammer 4K works off a 2-meter range system, I would say, because a character can only move up to 18 meters. So at a 100-meter range, you're probably going too far with a battle map, but you can do that. And then there's the Tech Priest Engine Seer. Tech Priest Engine Seer, in my opinion, you have to be really cautious about, because in the Warhammer 40k system, there seems to be a mechanical flaw that I'm just noticing, is that if you have really good aptitudes for acquiring intelligent-based skills, and you're a tech priest, which means you can easily acquire mechanical cybernetics and augments, that means you can easily focus on tech use, but still be really good at ballistic skill stuff. That was weird. So my reasoning for mentioning that is that from my earlier thing is the reason why that tech priest was able to get so overpowered with the MIU interface and the multi-las gun is because he didn't have to spend all that much points on that stuff. He was easily able to get the cybernetics because I hand waved it thinking that would be a good little thing to help the new player get in. But the tech priest gets additional cybernetics that I wasn't aware of. So he got way more cybernetics than everyone else. So he was able to give himself bulging biceps through a cybernetic. He didn't have to spend EXP on it. He was able to give himself several other warfile implants that would boost. Oh right, it was a mind impulse unit that boosted the MIU interface. He got himself that, which gave him an extra bonus to his ballistic skill. And then I think he replaced his arms with robotic arms, which doesn't make sense with bulging biceps. Because the idea behind bulging biceps is that you work out a lot, so your muscle mass increases. So if you get the cybernetic thing, which is vat-grown muscles, you're increasing your strength on top of that because it's a vat-grown muscle, so it's still living tissue attached to your existing living muscles to make you stronger. But then he replaced his arms with robotic arms, adding AP, and then somehow he still gets the first two things to apply to it. So that right there didn't make any sense to me. That's another loophole in the rules. So, long story short, a bunch of loopholes in the rules. Tech priests can easily cover all the bases. They can easily become a tank, are really good at shooting, and all the military stuff are definitely within the reach. So you have to be careful when someone makes a tech priest, because they can easily become the most overpowered character of any sort of squad, because they can easily buy everything or gain access to everything by circumventing it by getting cybernetics and upping their intelligent based stats. So I'm doing a weapon specialist. Let's go down to the weapon specialist. The weapon specialist gains +5 to his ballistic skill or weapon skill. So I'm going to add to his weapon skill. 25 plus 28, that's 30, then 33. And then he gets the aptitudes: agility, ballistic skill, fellowship, fieldcraft, finesse, weapon skill. Just copy and paste this out. So you can see what I'm doing here. So he gets the option of ballistic skill increase or weapon skill increase. Since my ballistic skill is already pretty high, and I want to make him more of a weapon focused guy, so I'm going to give him weapon skill increase. Then he gets his choice of athletics, survival, navigate, all these little skills down here. I'm gonna probably go a little fast on this. So he gets these at the known state. So when a skill is not known, it's untrained, which means you have a -20 to the stat. By switching it to known, that means it removes the -20. So I'm gonna give him survival and navigate surface because I think that's important. Oh, navigate surface isn't an option, I just get that, so navigate surface. Navigates, I don't know where it is, I'm not gonna look for it. So anyways, he gets navigate surface, Imperial Guard, Common Law, Imperial Guard, and more. So people don't roll on the Common Laws enough just because it's really hard to figure out what they do. Essentially, a Common Lore test would be used to help you gain information that your character should know, or discern information that your character needs to figure out. I'll probably cover this more in the section on how I run Only War, or how I would have run Only War if I kept going with it. But essentially, if a player is having trouble trying to come up with a tactical solution to their problem, you could have the player roll Common Law War, and then they could use that to go, alright, so this is your tactical situation. Based on your degrees of success, you have figured out that you are at a tactical disadvantage because the enemy has the high ground and you have the low ground. So you definitely need to reposition your troops to a higher position in order to engage at the high ground. To safely engage the enemies at the high ground. Something like that. Starting talent is Lasgun Barrage, Rapid Reload, and Weapon Training, blah blah blah. I haven't really looked into Lasgun Barrage. I think that's just something that gives them multiple attacks. Rapid Reload is very good. It allows you to reload your weapon at half the amount it would normally take a reload. A Lasgun should only take a full round to reload, so that you would cut that down to a half action. Some guns can, however, take up to 3 full rounds or 3 full actions to reload. So that's why Rapid Reload is so good, because you basically reduce that by half. You also don't have to reload your weapon at all if you give it a ammo feeder, which can either come in a ballistic variety or a energy variety for lasguns. Alright, so I get 4 frag grenades or crack grenades, good craftsmanship lasgun, or common craftsmanship flamer, or common craftsmanship shotgun, or common craftsmanship regimental favored weapon. So I'm already getting from my regimental choices here. There's a lot of redundant choices up here, so I would probably go with the crack guns, crack grenades, and then I would go with the good quality lasgun because the GM said I can't use the good quality upgrade on the gun up here. And I shall go grab what that. Actually, I can't do that. I have some other stuff to discuss on this page. I'll have to duplicate it and then I'll go grab that page. So a good craftsmanship gun versus melee weapon there's 2 differences between the two. Melee weapons usually get an increase in chance to hit and damage, while as ranged weapons only get an increase in damage, I believe. Let me double check that. That's what I'm doing. I must have went past it. Alright, so good quality melee weapons. You get a +5 to hit with your weapon. And then best quality, it gets a +10 to hit with the melee weapon. And its damage increases by +1. That may not seem like a lot, but this system is all about stacking beneficial effects. With your negative effects, you cancel them out, or to exceed them. So +5 is actually a lot when you think about it. Most of the time you can do a half action to aim, which will add a +10 to your attack, and then I think there's like an actual thing in here that gives you a standard +10 whenever you do attack. So your chance to hit is actually higher than just a 33 by default. Alright, ranged weapon craftsmanship goes from shoddy, which is it can jam and blow up in your hands probably, and good quality, or well, common is it is assumed that most weapons are at the common quality, unless it says otherwise, and then good quality is a step up from that. It loses the unreliable quality, it gains the reliable quality. Reliable quality means that even on a result of 99 and below, it won't jam or explode, but on a result of 100, it jams and explodes. So it basically just raises the area in which the weapon could possibly crit fail on you and explode or jam. Well, weapons commonly don't explode on you. Commonly don't. And then best craftsmanship ranged weapon is that this weapon never suffers from jamming or overheating, treating any such result as a miss. So, now that I have reread this chart, giving a ranged weapon a upgrade is not that much of an issue. So I'm just going to go up here and then remove this right here. Since a good quality ranged weapon just adds the reliable quality, that means any weapons they want, they can just switch it to common. Good craftsmanship armor just adds 1 AP, which is also fine. So I'll leave that as is. Back to this. So I'll probably go with the crack grenades. 4 frag grenades or 4 crack grenades. I'll take the 4 crack grenades. He's a specialist, so he's probably really good at blowing up armored vehicles or armored structures. He has a good craftsmanship las gun. Common craftsmanship shotgun. And then his add option. Let's see here. Favorite basic weapon. I think there's an option here for a great weapon. 1 combat shopping reloads. Yeah, right here is the option for 2 one-handed melee low-tech weapons for my main. 1 suit Imperial Guard flak, and where I just missed it. Here we go, great weapon. So right here, I would probably select the great weapon, giving him like a great sword, which is just basically a large weapon that does 2d10, and it's unwieldy. And then down here, I'll give him the las gun, good craftsmanship las gun. And then I'll go back up here, and then I can't give him the sniper rifle because that conflicts with the ranged weapon again, because it's a main weapon. This right here doesn't conflict with main weapon selections. I get him suit of Imperial Guard flak armor, 3 frag grenades and 2 crack grenades, so that's a lot of crack grenades I have now. So I didn't need to buy crack grenades because one squad person can get tons of crack grenades on him. I should probably get a grenade launcher now. Let's see here. I forget the quality of the grenade launcher. I think it's at common craftsmanship, I think it was. So I could probably pick up a grenade launcher with this option right here. Oh, sorry. No, this option right here. I can pick up a grenade launcher. Grenade launcher, great sword, good craftsmanship las gun. And that's it for my war gear. Now for generating stats. So stats are generated with 8 plus 1d5 plus any sort of modifiers from your regiment creation process. And our modifier there is a +1. So there's 2 ways of rolling for this. There's 1d5 and then there's 1d5 sorry, 2d5 and take the highest. I started doing roll 1d5 and take the highest just because, let's see here, let me roll like 2. Oops. So I can roll a 3 and then only get like 11 HP, which has to be 14, right? Yeah. 10, 11, sorry, 12. 12 HP. Or I could have gotten this 5, and then I could have like a higher amount of HP. So it really depends on how easy you want players to have it, or like maybe you want the combat to be really harsh on them, so you're going to give them more HP. Whichever way you justify it, it is possible to let them roll 2d5 and take the highest one if you want. Since you're the GM and you can make that ruling, if people think the only war setting is too harsh on them and they're more casual players and they don't really want that super hardcore experience of only having 11 HP and then getting shot in one time by a sniper rifle and then their character being not dead but basically knocked out of action because they lost a leg through a critical effect, then this is where having a higher wound count might help them out, because then they won't be in criticals right away, therefore they won't need immediate medical attention and they could stay in the fight and therefore play slightly longer with that character, but not once again not completely be dead. That's the thing there. I tried out the 2d5 system. I'm thinking about it. I can't remember. I killed one player through combat because I rolled really high on damage. I essentially critted on the damage, which basically splatted him. Most of the time in the Warhammer 40k system, players will only really die. Well, I mean, they'll die all the time, but the real parts where they'll die is when something can do multiple hits of damage to them, and it has really high AP mixed with a high damage roll. If the damage has the potential of exceeding 10 HP, then that could potentially kill a character in one shot. And this is going through their soak. Most characters should have a soak of 30 in this system because it's the plus 20 to your stat. So that's a little bit of game balancing. It's not really something to be worried about, but if you want players to have a slightly easier time or be more tough to kill, you could give them an extra 1d5 and drop the lowest. Let's see here. Moving on. Oh, right. Let's see here. I had... So, let's see here. Well, as the rules state, if I had like a duplicated aptitude, and if I had the same aptitude, say my homeworld gave me strength aptitude and my class gave me strength aptitude, then I could just select a different aptitude that matches that sort of type. So I would just switch to another physical aptitude with the GM's permission. Skills, you get a if I had athletics already at the known, and my regiment creation gave me athletics again, then I could just step it up to trained. So let's say I had awareness at known, and then my regiment gave me it again, so now I have it at trained. So that's pretty good right from the start to have that out. Next is if a character would have specific talent twice from the regiment creation, especially he receives it again. So if I had like a double team from my regiment and then double team in my class selection, I would just get 100 EXP and I get to keep the thing still, which can go a long way. 100 EXP for some characters is pretty good, especially after character creation, where you can just spend it. Most stuff does not dip below 100 EXP though. To get like something costing at 100 EXP, it has to be a tier 1 skill, or at like the very lowest rank, and you have to have 2 aptitudes in it. And then, of course, favored weapons are easier to obtain. +10 to logistics tasks. I believe your starting logistics is a +20 or 20. And then down here I said DL. Oh, why did I put DL? GD5, DL1, or just a 1D5. And now we're on to generating a comrade. So a comrade is like, it's not like a fate point, but you can argue that it's kind of like a fate point. A comrade does a couple of things. The first thing it does is that it provides fire support. This means that the player gets a +5 to their BS or other attacks. Not all characters get a comrade, so you have to keep that in mind. The comrade also has, essentially, it has 3 wounds, and you only really deduct 1 wound per well, it's not really 3 wounds. It's like they have three different damage phases. It's lightly damage, medium damage, and then heavily. And of course, the last one is dead. So the idea behind this is essentially, if the player does something stupid, the comrade can take the damage for them. That's a little homebrew thing that I do for the player sometimes, is that, hey, you're getting attacked, your comrade steps in the way, and depending on how deadly the attack is, they might just die altogether. Or if the comrade just gets attacked all on his own, as the enemy can still target their comrade, they'll take light damage first, then medium damage, and then heavy damage and die. That's subject to the GM to determine which damage phase the comrade drops to. Obviously, getting hit by a rocket launcher in the chest should probably put you at heavily damaged or just outright kill them. And then I like to call this Lookout Sir. This is essentially a rule from the war game, but it's also in this rule book. Essentially, when a player dies, they take over the comrade. They take over control of the comrade and they roll him up as an actual character. If the comrade dies, it's probably because he jumped in a way to prevent the player from dying. So, if you're running a high lethality game, it's good to get players a comrade so that they get a +5 to their skill checks, as well as someone else to assist them with stuff. So you also get to order your comrade around. However, there's a certain amount of degree in which they can do stuff. If you want to order your comrade to, like, say, pull a switch or move like a few meters ahead of you and cover you, those are like simple things. But if you start ordering them to, like, man that tank while you run off to climb up a tower or something, that breaks the cohesion of your comrade and you. And it's a little bending the rules a little bit, so that's subject to the GM to rule if the comrade will happily stay in that tank and keep laying down suppressive fire. So, things to note about the comrade. Beyond that, you are welcome to go into great detail, all the way up to rolling up a whole new character. But also, you need to roll a demeanor for your comrade. The demeanor basically determines how your comrade will act. So let's say the comrade is optimistic. This is just roleplay flavor for the character. This character has an unshakable positive outlook on life. He is quick to reassure his squad mates that the trial they face are not a terrible or insurmountable, even if they actually are. So the optimist will essentially just keep giving morale uplifting speeches to his squad mates. And then of course there's stuff like Nihilist, self-explanatory, or Numb, where the squad member is just emotionally numb to the situation. Alright, so let's go into Only War campaign. How to make an Only War campaign. So I had this idea while I was making the Dark Heresy 2e campaign. Essentially the players are from a feudal world, or this regiment is from a feudal world. On that feudal world there is of course rival factions fighting over land disputes, as well as on that feudal world you'll find a secret inquisitorial base that's doing experiments and stuff. But that's pretext flavor. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that there's many different ways to start a campaign. You can start at the beginning, the middle, or the end. Without defining what you would think is the beginning, because obviously if you start something that right there is the beginning, but in some stories through a character's life kind of beginning. So at the beginning you could say that you are starting at the training camp and the players are training up to be guardsmen. This is probably a really good idea for people who are new to the system or the setting, because then you give them the opportunity, not a consequence-free opportunity, but like a lower stakes, less hostile situation where they can easily seek out aid and support if needed. So you could start them in a training camp where they're just training, learning how to be guardsmen, and don't really give them any EXP for doing that, I would say, unless they're accomplishing some sort of story reason. I should probably write this down. So this is basically the backstory for the regiment. So we're gonna go, I guess, downwards more. Alright. The beginning. Start in a training camp. So in this training camp, they would be being trained by veteran Cadians. And then this is what my campaign's about. It's basically about a bunch of fair warders who are conscripted into the Imperial Guard, and then this right here is a segue into the pre-written adventure in the core book, but I can now easily delete that and replace it with something else. That's for the character specifically. And then here's a little thing right here that I put in. This is like the main goal for this regiment, is that they're basically created to support the repairment and the repairs and recovery of vehicles. There's many different ways to rationalize this point right here. Sure, they're feudal warders and they probably don't have, well, that good of technology understanding, but of course there's probably someone who got really good training in it, or a couple people, or maybe they're assisting tech priests who were trained in it very well. And these would be NPC tech priests. I would recommend that if they're part of the regiment, if they are a player, they have to use the same regiment as everyone else. That includes the benefits and the negatives. So just because they're a tech priest does not mean they get to ignore the -3 to intelligence. They get it like everyone else. If they really don't want to be a part of that regiment, they have to make a whole new regiment and select it, or select a pre-made regiment. But then they get the penalty of being a mixed regiment. Just because you're a tech priest does not mean you are separated from your regiment to the point where you have nothing to do with them. Same thing with Commissar and Tempestus Scion or Weapon Specialist. Any other class, any player made is part of the regiment, no matter what. It's my point. All right, so you can easily BS how they got training to be a tech priest. Easily. Maybe they got taken from that world and sent to a forge world to get training. That seems expensive, so maybe the tech priest came there and trained them, or they were taken to a ship in orbit and trained there. Either way, they're tech priests and they're part of that regiment. Moving on. Oh, last thing is, because they're tech priests, part of that regiment, people might argue that they only have to answer to the Omnisire and the Magus. That's a no. That is considered mutiny. They have to answer to the commanding officers in the regiment. In Warhammer 40k, it is not heresy. It's not heresy. It's mutiny to it is mutiny to say that your commanding officer does not command you, and that's punishable by death because you're basically committing treason against your own army, which is something that happened in like the Horus Heresy. So they're probably not going to let that slide. Alright, so the beginning, there's multiple points to start at. We can start them in a training camp, or we can start them in the middle of their first war. So the perks of starting them at the training camp is it's an easy entry point for new players of the setting and rules, because you can easily justify going easy on the players. However, if you're on the battlefield, it's probably harder for the GM to justify finding assistance. Also, it's a little harder to learn the setting because then you're always worried about possibly dying. But then again, you get them right into the action, so. So, in the middle of the first war, probably in the middle of the first war, or at the start of their first military campaign. And this would be like as they're like dropping onto the world to fight the enemy faction. That's what the Against the Savages does basically, is the players are coming down in a drop ship to the planet, and then the drop ship gets shot, it crashes, and then immediately from there you're thrust into a battle with orcs. And the way that that book holds your hand is it holds your hand, but at the same time gives you a lesson to learn. The first part where it holds your hand is if players are taking too long to kill the orc forces, it encourages the GM to summon a squad of guardsmen to assist them. If the players are killing the orcs too quickly, it encourages the GM to summon more orcs to fight. And then if the players don't think and use their brain, it's really hard to put that without sounding insulting, then if they're not very aware of their surroundings, or they don't care and they just focus on fighting the orcs, the ship blows up because they didn't like think about that, because the thing's on fire behind them and they're like, well, there's orcs over here, let's just fight them. So that's immediately for first session. You crash land, you learn how combat works. The GM can sort of change the difficulty of the fighting. The players can try stuff out with their weaponry and tactics because you're just fighting one force of orcs. And then on top of that, if the players are not like paying attention, or they think this is just a mindless combat slog of them just having to kill the enemy force and then they win, they are then quickly surprised by the fact that the ship they crash land in explodes, and that will probably kill them in the blast because they weren't paying attention if they're using that thing as cover. So that's a pretty good campaign point, a mission design point, is to base your missions kind of like that, where the players have an enemy force to fight against, but also you have several other objectives that may aid or impede your progress if you don't contend with them, like little things like the flaming jet is about to explode. Small stuff like that will add in some extra flavor. So then, beginning the campaign. So an Only War campaign, you probably want a primary. First of all, the beginning, I got that knotted out, bullet pointed out. Let's see here. You want to figure out from that point is what kind of campaign will this be? Will this be a war campaign or like a military campaign? Alright, so a military campaign, in my little idea for this is just how I'm putting it, is that this is more like a theater of war, where it's just like one side versus another side and you're on a planet and that's it. So like take Dawn of War, Dark Crusade for example, it's just like a planet. The players have one primary objective, which is defeat the orcs, and then the regiment commanders give them small objectives that slowly build up to that final objective, which is defeat the orcs. So they can get a variety of missions this way in the military campaign. Maybe they're destroying key things, rescuing people or things, defending positions, scouting. I don't know, you can pretty much make anything a mission. Don't just leave it up to combat stuff. You don't have to sit there in a trench and have your players fight the orc horde as they just charge at them. You can do scouting missions where the players are sent out to do some reconnaissance, figure out what the orcs are up to, what kind of forces they're sitting at. That way your allies can better prepare for the assault. You can send the players out to like rescue the native population of civilians in a bunker somewhere that the orcs are about to assault or are assaulting. You can also have them sabotage. Orcs like to loot tanks from Imperial Guards and then repurpose them into their own little looted tanks. So recovering tanks is also a viable mission. Or escorting a tech priest to fix a mechanical issue is also a viable mission. Let's just say, for sake of argument, that sure, the players might be good at tech use, but your regiment particularly got a tech priest who's highly skilled, who's far superior than you, and you need to get him to that location. So let's delve into this one mission right here, so you get a good example of mission build-up, or at least how I would probably run it. Escorting a tech priest to fix something. So tech priest is an asset that's very important that the players can't let die, and this would be an NPC, preferably, for the purpose of how I'm going to write this thing, but you could do a player as well. The tech priest is highly skilled, and therefore does not need a tech use test when dealing with the objectives. So I wrote it like this because if I have it as an NPC, I'm not going to roll to determine if the tech priest gets it right. I'll probably roll to determine how fast he accomplishes the task if time becomes a issue. So I'll write that in, if time is an issue. So if the tech priest is a player, I would definitely make him roll for it, because that's more interactive for the player. And then I would also determine how long they take. Alright. So their objective should read as escorting a tech priest to fix a mechanical issue. So let's say down here, there. Drop ship carrying a Baneblade was shot down, and we need your squad to escort a skilled tech priest to repair and recover this important military asset. So I made it a Baneblade, just, players probably won't have the chance of driving or touching a Baneblade. Probably won't, I say. So this is a good opportunity to throw some extra flavor in there. I could have made it anything, like a dropship, a normal tank, a Chimera, but I went Baneblade because I have an idea for how epic this is going to end up being towards the end. But it can theoretically be anything. Also, making it a Baneblade means that the skill required to repair it and the time is probably going to be really high. So let's see here. They got their mission. Next step is to gear up for the mission. So, in Only War, the GM is encouraged to just give players items that are required to accomplish the mission, and then also let them to roll for stuff that they need. So on the gear list for items that I absolutely think they need to accomplish this mission is a Voxcaster. If they already have a Voxcaster, they don't get another one. Additional thing that I think they should have is probably repair kit and supplies. So this would probably be something really heavy. This is probably something really heavy. So they're probably gonna need like someone's gonna have to dedicate a lot of their inventory space to carrying it. This is probably 10 pounds or something like that. I don't know how much weight the weight system is in here. So essentially my idea for the repair kit and supplies, this is probably not in the rule book, and it's not necessarily a multi-tool. Essentially this is a key item that the GM is creating out on thin air to basically say, if that tank is broken, you need this to repair it. If you don't have this, then there's going to be penalties to repairing the tank. Because you can't just fix a tank with a snap of your fingers. If the cogitator is missing in a tank, then you can't just jury-rig a cogitator. You can't build it from scratch, you need components. So if the tire is missing off a car, you can't just go, well, here's the tire out of nowhere. That's not how that works. So you got to make sure you encourage players to actually have the materials to perform repairs and maintenance. So I'm going to add in, without it, repairs are impossible. So this is a secondary thing they have to protect. So not only do they need the tech priest alive because he's probably really skilled at it, but they also need the tools to repair it. But once again, if the players end up being good at tech use by the time they get to the tank, then they can perform the repairs themselves with the supplies. And if they lose the supplies, then I'm pretty sure they're shit out of luck. Or if they lose the supplies, they'll have to scavenge for more supplies. So that's probably a future bullet point. So, as a result of losing the supplies, they will have to scavenge for more. So, as the GM, you need to figure out something that would reasonably have the necessary materials to repair the tank that they could strip. So, the first thing would be the thing that was carrying the tank probably crashed with it. That's probably not going to fly again, assuming that it was an air vehicle carrying the tank. Then they could just strip the transport. So this right here will add time to their mission, which will probably increase the chances of them being attacked. Alright, so back up here. I'm trying to do this in chronological order. So first thing is they get their mission injector. Second thing is they get their necessary gear to accomplish the mission. So Voxcaster so they can radio back to base, repair kits and supplies. And then they're going on the mission. So go encounter. Of course, they're going to encounter the native. Well, I mean, not. Of course, they're going to encounter the native population. It's more like they're going to encounter the native hostile species and fauna. So in Warhammer 40k, there's all sorts of variety of hostile creatures and plants, and this really depends on which world you're on. When it comes to hostile plants, mostly death worlds have the most hostile plants that will literally come after you to kill you. Whereas most planets probably won't have that much hostile plants or fauna. It really depends. But these are all alien planets, so you can easily justify very small amounts of hostile plants. So maybe hostile plants would be like a plant that just obstructs the player's pathway. Too much vines or something like that. Now, hostile fauna. This is like an animal or creature. Most animals native to a planet were probably migrated from one planet to another, and the way that the migration process works or is justified is maybe like a rogue trader was selling like razor hawks to people on this planet, and then someone got loosed and started basically murdering everything else on the planet and feeding off of it. So razor hawks are basically like eagles, but they're bulletproof and they have knives for wings. That's a really odd picture, but that's essentially the idea. So hostile fauna and plant life. This is a pretty good this is a interesting encounter because it puts players against the elements. So encounter should probably be against the elements. And I'll just put hostile fauna and weather. So let's say this is like not like a super forested planet. This is like probably like average forested area. But still, if it starts to rain really hard, then it gets really hard to maneuver through the environment. So let's say it was raining really heavily, so the ground's super wet, so it's hard for them to traverse the environment to travel to the destination. Plus, because it's raining, it gets really cold, and it gets really hard to see. So the encounter is against the elements as well as hostile fauna. And I'm just going to leave it open to any sort of thing, but I'll probably put something in there. And then this is probably hostile encounter would be, well, I'm not gonna say orcs, but I probably should just say orcs or other enemy faction. If you don't like orcs, you can just slot in a different enemy faction, but I'm gonna go for orcs this time around. And then somewhere along the track of the journey, they get into like a orc patrol or something like that. Encounter orc patrol. So the players have the option of engaging this orc patrol, engaging the orc patrol, sneaking around it, maybe following them and figuring out what they're up to. So what is the benefit to engaging the orc patrol? So if they engage them and eliminate them, then they probably reduce the threat of orcs in the area. And if they sneak around them, they avoid the confrontation, so they save resources. So let's see. But maybe this will bite them back. This will come back to bite them in the ass. Who knows? All right. So after 2 encounters, probably a third one, the final one to get them to the destination would be encounter. This would probably be like a choice moment, something choice on like a morale stage. Ally squad. Alright, so this is like a moral choice point for the players. They have a mission, but they're also getting a call from help from allies. So their choice is to save them, get reinforcements. So if they help the squad, they'll probably get reinforcements or aid on accomplishing their mission. If they ignore orc, so these are really generic bullet points here. The reason why that is because you don't really know how or how successful they will be at saving them. So there's many ways for that to play out. But a general idea is that if they save them, they get some sort of benefit. Either they reduce the presence of orcs in the area by limiting the orcs. If they save them, perhaps they can run some sort of scouting mission for you to let you know if there's going to be any more hostiles coming your way for when you get to your primary objective, or they can come with you, or basically a bunch of other stuff the players can figure out on their own. It's not your job to figure out answers. I mean, it is your job to figure out the answers, just not questions. Or does it do both? It's both, but just don't get bogged down in those two things. Alright, so the ignore enemy presence. Enemy presence increases. So because the orcs managed to defeat the allied squad, it's easier for them to roam around the area. So now there's more rogue orcs everywhere, and it's going to be harder for the players to reach their destination and get the tank back. Also probably defend the tank because there's less of them and now even more orcs in the area. Alright. So right around here, I'll probably check and see if they have the supplies. So I do check supplies. Sorry, oops. So this right here, I'm not going to tell them that they'll have to do this, but I'll probably wait for them to try to figure it out first. But if they have trouble figuring out how to get the supplies to repair the vehicle, actually I should probably do the pretext first. So they reached the Baneblade. So the first thing I have to do is deal with hostiles. So depending on how long it takes them to get there, narrative-wise, and what you want, you could say that there's hostiles there trying to loot the tank, or there's hostiles coming in after the fact. Whichever one is fine. So I'm going to check the area. Alright, so up here at the top, we should probably say how long it's going to take them to do this mission. Let's say travel time is 12 days. Let's say down here, this is like the bare minimum, or actually, yeah, this right here is the exact travel distance, 12 days. And then down here, check the area right here. So it took too long, it would be... So 12 days is obviously a really high number. I'm just doing that just to give you an idea of maybe it's 12 days away, and that's well, the farther away you set it, the easier it is for you to justify as a GM why no more reinforcements will come. Essentially, so a hike that's 12 days away means that it's going to take 12 days or more for reinforcements to hear the call for help and then send them out there, because it takes time to prep and then run out there. All right. Alright, cool. So that's what happens on a time scale on if they take too long to get there, or they get there fast. If they get there fast, they have a chance to prep and counter any sort of hostiles that would arrive on the scene. If they take too long to get there, the hostiles are already there, probably messing with the tank. And they have a more defensible position. So check the area, then check the tank. Alright, so now that we're on the step of checking the Baneblade. So let's see here. So upon checking the Baneblade, Alright, so now they check their supplies. If So I'm just going to build in, no matter what, that he has to roll to see how long it takes him to accomplish. Yeah, the players. I have to reword this whole thing. I'm just going to delete this and start over. Check skills. So I'll probably add on the penalties later, but I assume it's going to take them like probably days or hours and days or something like that to repair the Bane Blade. Regardless if they're a tech priest or just a character with good tech use skill, I would still say it takes some days. Just as an extra, well, you should have kept this NPC alive kind of caveat. But if they never wanted the tech priest to be an NPC to begin with, I would still make it take days, because then that just adds more conflict and it's not a consequence. It just adds more drama to the situation. Because the NPC having to roll tech use repeatedly is just silly. You should just pass that through. There's no reason for that. Unless it's in like a combat situation and it's really make or die for the NPC players. But I feel like the NPC, you don't want to sit there and have to worry about succeeding a test with them all the time. You got enough work as it is. But you can roll or not roll, it's up to you. But that's just how I'm going to write it in. And then the Bane Blade is being repaired. Enemy forces come to attack. So if the players are busy, if all the players are busy repairing the tank, that means no one can really set up defenses or stay on watch. So let's do set up defenses and watch. So I'll put the question mark there, and then enemy forces come to attack after X. Oops. So I'm going to put down X days, because I'm probably going to roll a 1d5 to determine how many days it takes them to repair a Bane Blade. Because the reason why it's going to take them like days to repair it, is because once again, this is a grimdark setting. Not many people know how things work. Even if you're a tech priest, you're mostly working off a blueprint. And even if you're a guardsman, just working off of what's the word for it? Learn on the job knowledge. You still have to figure out how this particular machine functions. So that's why it's going to take days, and then you have to figure out what component goes where and how it goes in there, and then you have to do some test driving or testing it out, make sure it works properly. Basically, justify it any way you want. Also, you're not in an actual workshop. Sure, you probably brought the tools, but you still have to deal with the elements. So maybe it has harsh rains there. Other stuff that's distracting you is out there. So it's going to take you time. You don't have the most efficient tools. You have the portable kind of tools. Like if this was like in a Forge World workshop, then this would probably take you. When I just for the sake of argument, it would probably take you D5 minus 3 days, versus this will probably take you D5 plus 3 days or something like that. So anyways, this is harder because it's out in the open and you have portable tools. And then for enemy forces come to attack. Cool. I should probably note that the Baneblade has tons of guns on it, so it's basically like a weapons platform. So I should probably note up here that the players need to check and make sure the Baneblade weapons are unoperable. So I'll leave this up to the GM, is to check and see if the weapons are ready to use. Determine if the weapons are ready to use by the GM, and then players would check them, hopefully, and they'll go, oh, well, this is broken. Or the GM will just say, oh, well, you guys checked over the Baneblade, well, it looks like some of the guns are busted and won't fire because they're jammed from the fall or something like that. So guns come in the form of las cannons, twin link bolters on the side, pintle mounted size, and then there's the main cannon, demolisher cannon, and then there's the pintle mounted heavy stubber or auto cannon. So that's a lot of firepower on this thing. So if it's just sitting there and people are running at it and there's already people in there repairing it and someone's keeping watch, then that's a very highly defensible area of Baneblade. Very powerful. So I would probably opt to say that most of the guns aren't working. I would probably figure out which gun I want to work. Perhaps the main gun works, but it can only fire one shot. So let's go back up here. And the reason why it can only fire one shot is because the reload mechanism for it's broken. So if the player specifically fixed the reload mechanism before everything else, they could probably get the thing up and running faster. Or release that part up and running faster, but the whole tank is probably not working properly. I'll just put that. So Baneblade is probably too big for this kind of scenario. Because because it has too much firepower on it, so I might downgrade it to a normal tank or a Chimera transport. Because I have to throw a lot of shit at this Baneblade to put a dent in it. And the players will probably focus on getting the guns online, which will allow them to basically turn anything into mincemeat. So I might just swap out Baneblade for normal tank. Unless, of course, I send Chaos Space Marines at them or other tanks, then that's a different story. So I'll leave it up to the GM who runs it, or I'll change my mind depending on the party makeup and their personality or whatever. Alright, so then, after determining which guns are operational, you can then defend the tank. After the first assault on the tank is completed, this will be like an epic stand where the players are just about to fix the tank, and then enemy forces show up and they start fighting. And then they kill the enemy force. Hopefully they repel them. If they repel them, more will come. ... And then the way that we're going to key them into more will come. Let's say as like the last orc dies, he fires a flare up in the air, signaling to the other orcs that there's a valuable target over here. Or basically, in some way or manner, the last surviving person in the squad, or hopefully before it gets to that point, they call for reinforcements once they realize they're all being wiped out. And is that point that it is at that point that the players now have more of a pressure on themselves, because now they're fighting more of an active clock against time, or race against time. The longer they take to repair that tank, the more chances, the bigger the force they'll become. Well, the closer that enemy main force will get to them. So now we're moving on to the escape. Tank is repaired, and time to GTFO before main enemy force. So because the main enemy force has been signaled and they know their location, they're probably all going to move on them, resulting in the players doing a big let's get this tank back to base thing, because that's part of their primary mission, is to recover the tank, not just repair it and then start murdering all the enemies. And if players start doing that, you should summon armored infantry to fight them, or more dangerous foes. But that might get really bloated and heavy on the NPC side for the GM, so hopefully they don't do that. And because this is the Baneblade, of course it's going to bring something that's highly dangerous against the Baneblade. So don't just throw cannon fodder at them, but do occasionally throw some cannon fodder enemies at them, because they don't know exactly the situation, perhaps. So there's probably going to be like really soft targets running at them, and they'll be easily able to dispatch them with the Baneblade's assault cannons, bolters, and maybe las cannons. But then more heavier and armored targets will start to rush at the Baneblade, such as tanks, maybe some flyers, and then at that point they really need to get out of there, because then they're being slowly, their armor is going to be chipped away pretty quickly at that point. with a lot of anti-armor units surrounding them, as well as tanks. And let's make sure they come in at all sides to encourage them to encourage the players to keep moving away. Because otherwise, it just seemed like we can just stand here and hold our ground because they're all just going to come from in front of us. So that's the escape. And that's the end of the mission, pretty much. Alright, so a specialist campaign. Oh, I forgot to tell you the difference. Alright, so a military campaign essentially is one war front against another one. So orcs versus humans on a giant planet with nothing, just back and forth, hold the line kind of combat situations. What I just got done doing was more like a specialist campaign, where the players are like specialists sent on special missions that branch out from the main regiment to do very complex missions, such as recovering a Baneblade, assassinating an enemy commander, or something like that. And then, of course, the last step is mixing those two first ones together. The reason why I draw a clear distinction between a military campaign versus a specialist one is because some people might just think you're a guardsman. You just stand there shoulder to shoulder with your other guardsmen, and then you just shoot at the enemy in a trench. That's what I mean by military campaign. Just cut and dry, you're just shooting a bunch of other dudes and they're shooting at you. Alright, so once you determine what kind of campaign you want, you block out, you pick out a main enemy. Pick out a main enemy. There. And mission types. Probably should drop that S. I thought there was some sort of keyboard shortcut for that. Alright, mission types. And let's see here. We are moving on to... I think that's it about campaign building for our... Oh, well, I guess the last final thing is what I like to add in there. So there's Only War. This is the book for running military-based campaigns. And then there's Dark Heresy 2E, which is inquisitorial agents running investigation missions. And there's Black Crusade, where it's missions about missions about more. It's like a higher tier campaign with Chaos Space Marines and heretic guardsmen and people fighting against the Imperium. And then there's Rogue Trader, which is all about exploiting the Expanse and stuff. So after Imperial Guardsman campaign, I would say arguably that you could shift them into Dark Heresy 2E or into Black Crusade and have them fight against heretics and possibly become corrupted. It's up to you at that point. So I'm going to write in here, campaign transition Dark 2E. So because the main player survived and they did all this cool missions and they won this main theater of war, they completed it, they defeated the Orc Menace. Let's say an inquisitor comes online and recruits them into his retina. So now instead of doing missions where they're just fighting stuff, they're now going to be doing missions where they're aiding the Inquisitions and doing more complex operations, such as investigations. Or we could send them into Black Crusade, which is a higher tier of play than Only War. It's not a higher tier play as in, it's more like a late game. Like if you were playing an MMO, this is like a mid-level area, and then Black Crusade is like the late game. The late game as in your character has become corrupted, or maybe they're fighting to prevent themselves from being corrupted or something like that. But most of the time when people play Black Crusade, they're corrupted or trying to get corrupted, because that's kind of the main mechanic around that system. So you would basically have turned on the Imperium, and now you're trying to, I don't know, do something evil in the galaxy. So that's when Black Crusade comes in. Or you could do Dark Heresy 2E, where you're doing investigations to stop more higher and complex threats against the Imperium. Since you proved yourself in battle, you probably should be good at helping Inquisitorial agents. Let's see here. And this really depends on your player makeup. A Imperial Guardsman after a certain EXP rate will probably equal the EXP of a Black Crusade character, which can stand toe-to-toe arguably with a Space Marine. So that's my likely situation, what I would do after a campaign in Only War. I was actually trying to do the campaign transition to Dark Heresy 2E, but everyone built like super combat focused characters, So I'm not saying that they were like ballistic skill, dodge, and all of these other combat stuff. They were just basically like weapon skill and then toughness value up, and then they ignored awareness, deceive. Now they got dodge. Basically, they ignored every other stat because they were like, we are just basic guardsmen. We're made to shoot the enemy, and that's about it. So with that kind of mentality, those players would not work out well in a Dark Heresy 2E campaign because they weren't interested in putting thought into their actions or doing an investigation aligned campaign where their actions have higher consequences, and the only solution is not shoot the enemy. The solutions are find out what's going on and then deal with it accordingly in a discreet manner. Their solutions were just blast everything, if that makes sense. Whereas a Black Crusade game might fit them better, but at the same time, Black Crusade is like the opposite of Dark Heresy 2E in the aspect of it's not just run in there and kill everything, it's the opposite of it. So instead of investigating the enemy, you're trying to prevent people from investigating you, and you're trying to do more subdued. You're trying to fly underneath the radar some of the times and avoid being caught while you sabotage the Imperium. You're still like a tight-knit group of specialists sent on very specific missions that your war boss or your warband wants to do. And then I would avoid Rogue Trader just because it feels kind of boring and shoehorny. Because most of the stuff doesn't really translate well. If you want to fly around and conquer new worlds, you might as well just stay in Only War. Alright, so with that said, we're going to move on to running the game. So, I mentioned already about dealing with toxic behavior. Commissars, I have heard stories that some people just execute people just because they can. So executing, I'm going to write in being a troll. So this is an issue if they're not like trying any other way to if like they're just executing people period for no reason or little reason, and they're just doing it just for the laughs, and at that point it's becoming toxic, and you should probably tell them that you can't play a commissar, because commissars should really try doing other stuff to motivate people. Plus it's also just a cop out and power gamey to just go, well, if you disagree with my orders, I'm just going to shoot you. Oh, well, if you make a mistake, I'm going to shoot you and then take over your command. That is super toxic. Do not let people do that. I'm going to type in above the law. Some people pick commissars because they're above the law and therefore can act however they want. Don't let them do that. Let's see here. Tech priests. Tech priests pretty much similar, the same thing, because tech priests are typically from a forge world and they're trained on there, and they worship the Omnisire. They think they don't fit in with the Guardsman or the Regiment. They think they're just sent over there as aides. But as far as I can tell from the rule system, they have to use the same Regiment stat block as everyone else, so they're still part of the Regiment. And I would still rule that as such, so prevent them from thinking they are a... So, the reason why this is problematic in two ways. First of all, they're basically committing treason against the Regiment by saying, I don't have to follow your orders, or I belong to the Tech Priests of Mars, therefore I answer to them and you can't really punish me. That is just blatant treason against the Imperial Guardsmen. You work for them now, that's why you're there. Secondly is that you want to encourage players to work together as a team. So one person going off on a tangent about how the flesh is weak every 5 seconds, or saying that tech priests are better and they're all cannon fodder, so they should run in front and all die. That is toxic behavior for the table. You definitely don't want to encourage that. So... So this actually happened at my table. I heard the Commissar thing didn't happen, but the Tech Priest thing happened. Tech Priests were constantly acting like they were better than the Guardsmen, and they would often rant about the flesh is weak and nonsense like that, and saying how they don't have to follow their orders and such. At that point, I should have just put a bullet in his head, the Tech Priest's head, because he basically admitted to committing treason and wasting Imperial assets. Alright, so pseudo-style characters. So the issue with this is counterproductive to the purpose of Imperial Guardsman, which is to protect the Imperium and die fighting. It's not to die fighting because that's all you can do. Those are two different ideas there. Two vastly different ideas. Alright, so once you get that sort of passed and out of the way, playing with tactics versus players who don't. So I got in a conversation with someone on Twitter about how he was using like actual military tactics against the players, while the players were like, I don't know, I guess treating it as too much as a game. Like, not to like disrespect D&D, but some people who play that game